life amusing?
Why is life like running when you tripping on your shoestring?
I don't care what you think, cause I've been on to new things. I've been writing my life script, cause life is like a movie.
Life is like a movie, but I've never been an actor. Yeah, these people acting, but I've never seen a camera.
Life is like a camera, and that's for the perfect moment, cause a picture's worth 1,000 words, and so I choose to focus.
A poet wrote this across the ocean. I hope you notice these messages up in a bottle for the hopeless.
Life is full of hope, kids, where you're hanging where the rope is. You can make it to the top, don't think of letting go, yeah.
Life just keeps on going, and my life just keeps on growing. And my mama told me don't grow up too soon, enjoy the moment.
Life is full of moments, hopefully you don't forget, cause life is how you live it, so don't live it with regrets.
Life is a movie, yeah, my life is confusing. Yeah, my life is a movie, yeah, my life is confusing. Oh, why, 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 yeah, why, 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 yeah, why, 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 I said why, I said why, I said why, I said why.
Welcome in, everybody. Henekoe, Kimatara, great to see you. Right back at you. Good. Welcome in. Hope you're doing well today, Kimatara. Let's get rid of the starting soon. Those captions are working. Things worked out pretty well today, despite the fact that I was kind of not ready to start streaming. When I started streaming, I'm still kind of not ready. It's one of those days, but that's okay. We've got lots of stuff to talk about, lots of things planned. In fact, while I'm in this screen, let's just go ahead and preview some of this. This is a name that I was not familiar with. Maybe some of you have heard of Yuval Noah Harari. I need to change. Still haven't fixed this. I'm sorry, everyone. There's lots of things with regard to the stream that I do need to fix. These views being one of those things that I really need to fix, and I just haven't gotten around to that yet. I also want to rearrange stuff on my whatever this is called. I used to remember what this was all called, but I can't remember what it's called now. But that's something that I want to rearrange everything here, because I'm in an awkward place, covering half of chat half of the time. Oh, and I haven't gone live on YouTube. Oh, I have gone live on YouTube, so never mind. Yay, I did that. That's right, I did that right before the end of that song, about halfway through. I'm hoping that I don't have any issues with YouTube because of that. Sometimes YouTube can be really weird. They might not post my video at all sometimes, and because I'm terrible about checking up on that kind of thing, I won't notice for like 2 or 3 weeks that it never posted, because I never go back and look at my content, even though I'm supposed to be doing that so I can get the clips and things. But whatever, one of these days I'll have time to do stuff. Today is not one of those days, and that's okay. We are getting caught up on stuff. It's one of the things that I want to talk about today. Hold on. Oh, right. Anyway, I'm getting distracted, as per usual. So this is a name I hadn't heard before. I came across some of their stuff, I think, a week and a half ago. So I've started to ingest some of their ideas, and I can't imagine we are not going to tie this in with the greater conversations that we've been having about the inability for us to come together around some cohesive idea of truth that enables us to communicate our ideas in ways that aren't just emotive, right? Maybe that's something that we should start adding to our language too. This idea of emotivism, I think, would be a good way to contrast the substance of what it is that I'm trying to get at, the thing that is lacking in language, right? When I say, I have the right to, this isn't me expressing an emotive opinion. That's emotivism. I'm not giving an opinion about how I feel about things. When I say I have the right to, these words should be authoritative. They should prevent, for example, a police officer from threatening my life and liberty. It should stop an ICE agent from interfering with my freedoms and my right to go on unmolested, right? Those words should have a command, a power to them that compels people, because those words have substance and meaning beyond emotivism, right? But we don't have that world. We don't exist in that world. And I'm trying to figure out how we get to a place where people can say, I have a right, and that actually matters beyond simple emotivism. Right, so I think that this name is going to come back up in our streams, but I haven't ingested enough of their stuff that I'm ready to start talking about their content yet. But if anyone's interested, this is going to be a precursor for where we're going. We're going to talk about some jokes. Thank you, Matt, for putting some stuff in the Discord. I don't think I'm going to get to all the stuff that you put in the Discord today, but maybe we'll talk about it. We'll see. I want to talk briefly about this. It's only a 5-minute video, and I think it is a very helpful continuation of the conversation from the stream before last, where I was coming back from the holidays and coming back from my mother's memorial service and getting back into things. And before we were getting back into things, I wanted to talk about some of the stuff that's going on, and maybe how we should be directing our time and energy and attention with regard to the stuff that's happening currently. And I think that this is a good carryover from that conversation that ties in well with the stuff that we'll be talking about today. One of the things that I want to talk about today, Alice Capella, I think is how that name, hopefully I'm not brutalizing Alice's last name, is an excellent content creator. This is called The Downfall of Traditional Media, and it might seem like when we first start watching this video, it might not be obvious how this ties into everything that we've been talking about and everywhere we want to go. But I think after the first 5 or so minutes, that some of my chatters who know how I think and who are very astute yourselves, you'll start putting together some of the connections. So I think that will be a good thing to watch today, and that will probably lead us right into Kayamatara's article. I think that the transition will really be quite smooth and organic, but who knows? Who knows? Especially considering I haven't actually watched the end of this video. I've started watching it twice already, and I've gotten through most of the video. I think somewhere around here in this ballpark, but I haven't actually finished the video. So we'll see. We'll see what Alice's conclusions are and whether they carry over well. If not, then I'll fill the gaps.
In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience. The United States has none.
Good.
In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience. The United States has none.
Quite frustrated at some of my comrades today. They are arguing over violence versus nonviolent resistance, but because they are white, they're missing the forest for the trees. While white leftists weigh the pros and cons of nonviolence versus violence, they miss that we are the stakes. They miss that we are the stakes, right? And no matter what, ours is a necropolitics. For nonviolence, oh right, that's just the. I wonder why. Oh, I think that.
In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience.
I need
the United States has none.
Cool down on that. Especially, is it going to do back-to-back again? No, it did not do back-to-back that time. But I do need to change the cooldown on that a little bit. But Kwame Ture is not wrong, right? We are past the stage of nonviolence as a strategy. For that frustration, Kaimatara, let me share this. This is yeah, here we go. I know we're done. So several months ago, I was talking about right, so there were protests and some people showed up to a protest that was a non-violent protest, and at that protest they set a trash can on fire, and the actions of those protesters setting the trash can on fire got a whole bunch of people arrested, delegitimized the whole event, and gave fuel for the opposition, gave fuel for the governor to crack down on demonstrations on college campuses, and had the opposite of the intended effect, right? So I was talking about when we are organizing for certain kinds of strategies, and when those strategies involve nonviolence, that we need to have a commitment to being principled demonstrators. And while I was talking about that, Nisa Simpson came in and shared this article with me, which it's the first time I had read it. So thank you, Nisa, again for sharing this, which I thought that I had a link for right here, but clearly I don't. That's wise, because I have What's Missing in Solidarity by Gelderloos, but I don't have the other work by Gilder. How nonviolence protects the state. So, I'm not sure if you were here yet for the conversations that we had around that. And when I went through this Gelderloos article, I want to say that they would have already deleted, the VODs would have already been deleted. It was before I was doing YouTube too. So anyways, let me just share the link. This is the link that I'm talking about, and this is from Peter Gelderloos, who is going to explain exhaustively, who is going to explain exhaustively how nonviolence fails in all of the ways, because there's a myriad of ways that nonviolence not only fails to help us achieve our ends, but a lot of times when we adopt a nonviolent strategy, we are handing over all of the victories to capitalism, to imperialism, and to the state. Right? When we adopt nonviolence as a practice, as our ethos, what we do is we ensure that the state maintains the monopoly on violence. That necessarily inarguably, incontrovertibly, demonstrably, and Peter Gelderloos is going to introduce a huge amount of evidence, right? How nonviolence is ineffective, how nonviolence is racist, how nonviolence is statist, how nonviolence is patriarchal, right? So for those white quote-unquote leftists, I'm not sure to whom you're referring to, and I don't want to be too loose and liberal with how I'm using that moniker, for better or worse. This would be a good share that is going to be extremely difficult for those people to overcome. And this is almost kind of a shorthand for you saying, okay, well, your advocacy for nonviolence is actually racist. Actually, your advocacy for us adopting nonviolence is literally patriarchal. Right now, you are enforcing the patriarchy right now, actually, right? And so this kind of robust work, I think, does a lot of the arguing for you, so you don't have to exhaustively, if you're just typing, because that can be quite a lot. The debate around effectiveness is a macabre joke. The study of effectiveness of nonviolence versus violent resistance is to study which form of necropolitical negotiation yields more favorable terms. Wow. Fucking spitting fire. Absolutely. Word for word, perfect. Yes, to study the effectiveness of nonviolence versus violence resistance is to study which form of necropolitical negotiation yields more favorable terms of survival for the condemned. It is important data, but from the necropolitical subject's view, it can feel like being asked to choose between a rope and a firing squad based on which has a higher historical rate of last-minute pardons. Right, the scaffold is still the centerpiece. I think that is exactly the right way to view it. To lock ourselves into any kind of strategy. Actually, it's really funny. So the greater project, I haven't even pulled it up yet. No, that's not what I want. The project that we've been working on, so I'm trying to pull up the outline for now. That will probably do it. Yeah, there we go. I adjusted the settings recently, so now everything's all wonky. It's because the class semester has started, so I have to actually use this. This is not doing. This is the same source in OBS that I use for when I'm teaching my class. I use OBS for teaching my class, and this is the same source. The semester's begun, and so I've been. Anyways, let me stop just rambling useless. The whole purpose of this in the first place was that I wanted to cement ideas around this tendency of the left to either lock into adopting nonviolent strategies or lock into requiring of leftists and of leftist engagement that all leftists be willing to do violence, right? This is something that I've talked about a number of times on the channel. These, when we see there being a right or wrong way to be a leftist, and we attribute certain values to that right or wrong way to be a leftist, people often either assume that we must adopt a nonviolent strategy, either because they misunderstand Dr. King or they misunderstand the greater strategy of nonviolence. Or leftists assume that all leftists must commit to being violent, right? And this is a false dilemma. This is a false dilemma. As leftists, we, all of us, need to understand that some people are going to be unwilling to get their hands dirty when it comes to doing violence. And we need to be okay with that. It's unreasonable for us to expect or require of other people that they do violence, especially if it goes against their personal codes of ethics. That's coercive and abusive and evil, actually, right? But we should also not find ourselves in a position where we are saying, well, we need to make sure that we are using a certain kind of strategy, and that strategy has to include only nonviolent tactics, because that limits us, right? We need to be able to respond to material conditions as those material conditions are, not to what we would like them to be, right? Committing to a tactic of nonviolence is ignoring the material reality of what the situation actually demands, and avoids the purpose of being able to be flexible and responsive, something that we've talked about before. Don't ask why looters are breaking glass, just what caused them to be so desperate that they need to walk through broken glass to get it. Right. Actually, yeah, I think that's very good. A very good on-point statement, too. A settler society refuses to engage with Black and Indigenous subject on the level of rationality. The dialectic is refused to us. They refuse to see us, even if nonviolence has more rational. Thus, we throw ourselves into irrationality, violent revolution. It makes them have to see it. There's lots of things that I want to say about that. But first, I'm going to say hi to Jane. Welcome in, Jane. It's good to see you. The question is, what is the most effective in a given situation? That's it. That's 100% it. Nothing else matters, right? Well, not nothing, right? There are two most important things, right? What is the most effective for the given situation?
Must have a conscience.
In a
the
court.
United States has none.
The United States has none.
In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience.
I forgot to
the
fix
United
the cooldown.
States
We'll
has
fix the
none.
cooldown in a second. All right. Right. We need to question, what is the most effective tactic in a given situation? And we need to square that with means ends unity. Those are the only two things that we need to be focused on. What are the material conditions, and how do we square those material conditions with means ends unity, right? That we want to make sure we are employing only strategies that are non-coercive, non-hierarchical, when and where possible. There's a caveat, there's the asterisk there that needs to be further unpacked. We need to make sure that they are not permanent positions. We are not creating structures of permanency that are going to themselves collect power around them and therefore create new systems of hierarchy or dominion. Right. Those are the only two things that matter. What are the material conditions, and how do we square those with means ends unity? That's it. Everything else is superfluous or distraction, right? And that's another thing, Kayam and Tara, that I would recommend, another strategy for engaging with those people. A strictly non-violence approach is the liberal approach, right? That's the famous comic of Dr. King being interviewed by the press and there's all the city is burning behind him, and the trash and the rubble everywhere, and Dr. King is saying another nonviolent protest, right? It's that liberal critique where they say, well, I support your advocacy, but my support for your advocacy is conditional on it not interfering with my status quo. It is, you can protest as long as it doesn't keep me from getting to work. You can demonstrate as long as it doesn't interfere with the businesses that I want to patronize. Right. So, right. And that's the liberal approach. That's the liberal take, is strict adherence to nonviolence. And now, to be clear, I am not on the internet saying we need to go out and be violent, right? That's not, again, that's a false dichotomy. We need to embrace a diversity of tactics, and a diversity of tactics will include feeding people and housing people and other forms of demonstration which are going to be nonviolent. It will also include people being willing to stand on the front lines and battle police, and people being willing to risk their own bodies to de-arrest comrades, and people being willing to do other things, right, in the time that those kinds of things are appropriate. Isn't the point of a protest to be disruptive? Yes. Right, absolutely. Yes, and that's the thing. Most liberals don't understand that very obvious reality about what protest is, right? That's my cats are so creative. I put a clip on the curtains so that they wouldn't part. So even when the cats are coming and going out of my curtains, that it doesn't. And they found a way to make there an opening in the curtains, despite the fact that there's a clip on there, and it shouldn't have happened. But here we are. Cats are amazing. But anyways. Oh yeah, I need to, before I forget, let me actually fix the cooldown on this thing. Because that's going to keep coming up a lot today. We're going to be talking about nonviolence an awful lot today. Oh, they're all individual timers. So nonviolent, the word, with and without the hyphen, and then nonviolence, with and without the hyphen, are both on here. And so it's 600 seconds is 10 minutes. So it's, we just keep triggering them all. That's why that we sometimes get back to back triggers, is because it's nonviolence, again, with and without the hyphen, and then nonviolent with and without the hyphen. Also, I do that. That doesn't matter. Yeah, I've got a clip on the curtain. And I could put a second clip on the curtain, but if I put a second clip on the curtain, then they can't push through it, in which case they're going to knock a whole bunch of stuff over to try and get there anyway. Right? That if I clip it more than I've clipped it, they'll there will be a full rejection. It'll do more harm than good. But yes, I think that doesn't matter what you pick. Both Malcolm and Martin were killed, right? And it's really kind of a shame that history seems to remember Martin Luther King and Malcolm X as being opposing figures, because they're not. A lot of their ideas, a lot of their ideals, a lot of their strategies has a lot of overlap, right? They, in a lot of ways, they're directed at the same ends. They're trying to accomplish the same things, and they use only slightly different kinds of tactics. In most of the cases, when you take a look at how they practically applied what they were trying to do, you read my comment above? No, I did not read the final comment above. I thought that there was... Okay, good. By the violence or nonviolent advice from outside, no matter how well-intentioned, feels like the final boss of colonialism. It says, even in your dying, you are not the author. We will script your final scene from for maximum political utility. Right. Strategy does not matter here in the ultimate sense. What matters is that in the face of the state's infinite other ways to kill you, you look it in the eyes and say, do you own my death? I will choose its meaning. I will choose its companion. However you kill me, you will kill a sovereign being, and that will be your problem to live with long after I'm gone. And that's a good way to think about the propaganda of the deed too, right? In I mean, I hate to say in a martyristic kind of way, but also that is kind of an appropriate way to think about this, about what you're talking about, right? That that we are willing to martyr ourselves for our cause, right? And that's really what it comes down to, I think. What we might consider the final threshold for most liberals is, and this is something we were talking about on last stream, that liberals still cling to the idea that they have privilege and that they will continue to have some kinds of privilege after all of this blows over. And that, I think, encapsulates the mindset of the liberal most, is that they assume that fascism and the fascist takeover that we are seeing all across the globe is somehow going to blow over. Like, wake the fuck up, right? And they are all just waiting to go back to brunch. That's what's going on, is if those people don't see themselves as on the line. They see your struggle. They see you as somebody who is willing to put yourself on the line, and they are happy to applaud you, right? Yay, good job, but only to a point, right? They'll support you in moral support. They'll support you with empty gestures and with performative virtue signaling. But when it comes down to putting their own bodies on the line, they don't see the risk worth it, because they feel like they can just wait for it to blow over and then go back to brunch, right? And that's, I mean, the way that you've articulated it is as much more nuanced and articulated. I've condensed your much smarter, more eloquent thing down to a simple slogan, right? Into a more condensed package, if you will. And there's more stuff that I wanted to unpack about one of your earlier comments too, so I'm going to go back up to that in a minute. But first, let me welcome in Wizard's Bread Book. Welcome in, Wizard's Bread Book. Good to see you. Good afternoon. Fun fact, propaganda of the deed doesn't just have to be the crusty stuff. It can also be food distro, like Food Not Bombs. Fantastic point, right? That's what we were talking about, is the problems associated with adopting a purely nonviolent strategy, but also the problems in left spaces of thinking about the antithesis of that, that all of our propaganda of the deed or all of our praxis needs to be directed at violence. And that's not right. It's a false dilemma. But thank you for bringing that salient point back full circle, right? That feeding people, housing people, providing legal support, right? These are things that we can do that are revolutionary, that help out those comrades. This is right. We need a diversity of tactics. We need a bunch of different people who are committed to doing a bunch of different kinds of things in a bunch of different kinds of ways. Because the strategies of the state, the strategies of imperialism are usually very simplistic. It's the carrot or the stick, right? There's not a whole lot of strategy to it. And those two strategies are very effective at most kinds of resistance. So we need to make our resistance as diverse and therefore as robust as possible. The more differenter we all are in our employment of strategies and tactics, the more difficult it is for the state, who is using only very simple means, to counteract our actions, to counteract our revolutionary building of power. Because that's what Wizard's Bread book is talking about, is the establishment of power, right? We live in a state, and in the state that we live, we have lots of state power and capitalist power and racist power and patriarchal power, and all of these things form this hegemon of the states of affairs in which we find ourselves. When we can create power structures of our own, we create pockets of resistance. We create space of freedom for other people to be less constrained by those systems that are designed to crush you. The defining aspect of propaganda of the deed is that its action contains the message, not use of force. Right, excellent, absolutely. Well said. Funny enough, the non-violence side that made me think of this was Marxist. Okay, I think it's more because they're white in the imperial core, though. A very serious critique of Marx that I have heard over and over from black Marxists and from indigenous Marxists is specifically that, Kiyomatara, is that the while nonviolence is not in any way necessarily part of Marx's construction. Marx's construction of how we get from capitalism to socialism and then to communism is one that is very liberal, that comes from a place of privilege where we can just wait, right? We can just wait for the antagonistic internal contradictions of capitalism to create the conditions necessary for the working class to seize the means of production. Right? It implies that we can all just sit around and twiddle our thumbs while black and brown people are being deprived of all their basic human dignities. Right? And so I think that attitude is actually kind of Marx. Not explicitly, not stated anywhere, and Marx doesn't advocate for a sit around and wait approach, right? But it is kind of, I can feel the taste of it, right? If that makes sense, in the background of Marx. Liberals have political apathy. That's absolutely true. That's, I think, well, going back to the boss battle, right? The how did you phrase it? The final boss of colonialism. I think that the final boss of colonialism will be trying to break through this liberal apathy, and I think that there. Let me start this in a different way. For many years, I have believed that there is a useful, or there is a value to trying to undermine liberalism as an ideology. The thing that I'm starting to suspect, I haven't made up my mind about this at all, but the thing that I'm starting to suspect is that strategy I fear that attempts to undermine liberalism in any rational way will always miss the mark. I'm trying to think of how to express this. Sometimes there's this problem in philosophy where somebody who knows the philosophy makes assumptions about the things, and so they say, they try to express their ideas in a certain way. And the person to whom they're talking to understands those words, but they don't understand them in the way that they were meant. So there's a disconnect where the other person believes they now understand the philosophy, and the person who is telling it to them believes that they understand the philosophy, but it's a significant disconnect, right? It looks like that's the same, but it's a significant disconnect in ideas and understanding. And I think that the ways that I have thought about going about undermining liberalism have all been those kinds of strategies. What I thought was I was lining up expectations, and it was a strategy that was going to not be this, right? But I think that that's what it is. I think that the only way that we get around liberalism, the only way that we break the cycle is, I think, praxis, is demonstration, is propaganda of the deed, is making explicit that these things aren't just ideas that look good on paper, right? That they can work, and that they do work, and have worked for hundreds of years, right? I mean, if we take human history, the kinds of communistic organizing that we are trying to build, that we would like to build, those kinds of things have worked for societies for hundreds of thousands of years. It's not like it's radical and new and completely different. It's just going back to pre-capitalist ideals about being together and understanding ourselves as communities of people that need each other, right? And I think that we can't fight against the apathy. I think that we have to fill the void. That's not the right way to put it, but it's like combating apathy is not the right approach. Showing people that apathy is the way of building a better world, and making a better world for them. I'm gonna get caught up with chat. Oh no, I'm not that far behind. Okay, so I will go on with this thing. So I was thinking about this just yesterday, that I wanted to bring this up in today's stream, and here we are. Thank you, everyone. You're awesome for leading me right down to where I wanted to go. There's and it's Yoruba. There's a Yoruban proverb For those of you who are not familiar, it's a group of, it's an indigenous nation of Africa, Yoruba, the Yoruba people of Africa. There's a Yoruban proverb that I'm not going to get it word for word, but the idea is when you make the problems of other people your problems, you solve your own problems. And this proverb really plays out. Thank you for the follow, whoever that was. Good, welcome in. Good to have you. So yeah, so when you make the problems of other people your problems, you solve all of your own problems, is the general idea. And it requires a kind of understanding that there's nothing that you can do for yourself, right? Really, when it comes down to it, there is nothing that you can do for yourself to solve your problems. Your problems are all unsolvable. However, if you direct your time and energy to solving the problems of other people, your doing so will draw attention to the problems of other people that can be solved by people's attention. And when you solve those people's problems, you are making their lives easier. You are creating space and freedom for them to develop their own talents and abilities and to be able to help you in ways that you can't understand, right? Because they have a different perspective of the world and are going to see things differently, are situated differently, and can help you out. That's how we make the world a better place, is by getting people to understand that they can benefit their lives. In fact, the only way that they can meaningfully benefit their own lives is through the advocacy for others, through fighting for the justice and the rights and the dignity of other people. That's it. That's the secret sauce. Okay, now let's get cut back up the chat. Fertilization of violence has the problem of making revolution less accessible to disabled folk and incentivizes more centralized organization. That said, fry some bacon. Right. But and that's going back to the thing that we were talking about earlier. When people are engaging frying the bacon, right? That will come with risks, and those risks could be ameliorated by medical staff being on hand and knowing where to be and what's going on and how they can help, right? Having legal personnel who are aware of what's going on and who's going to be where and the likelihood of those people being incarcerated or have charges brought against them, right? These are important things that don't require people to get up and go out into the streets. You can help the revolution. And this is, we need to fight the ideas of ableism that capitalism have given us, right? That when we think about people not being able to lend a hand, we only think that way because of capitalism, because of the conditioning of our capitalist societies. Everyone's valuable. Everyone has use. Everyone has something that they can contribute. And whatever it is, even if it's just somebody that is going to go around and pat people on the backs and say, there, you're doing a good job, right? Just that seems like it's not a big deal, but just having people around who are like, yes, thank you for your advocacy, thank you for what you're doing, thank you for, right? And even if you're not there physically in person to do that, if you're on the other end of a screen, that's something that you can do, right? There's something that you can do, whoever you are, no matter what your circumstance. There's something that you can do to help in the revolution. We've got a video that we're going to talk about in a little bit that's going to explain this whole thing that we're talking about really quite well. I also think violence as primary strat tends to pair with labor rather than class or oppression being the driver of the movement. Yes, right. And that's another problem too. We do need to seize the means of production. And that will require laborers, but I think that you are very correct in it would be a mistake for us all to assume that laborers are going to be the primary driver for a better tomorrow. Marxism doesn't have means and unity. Facts. 100%, Jane, spot on. Marxism doesn't have means ends unity. Lacks that, absolutely. And we've talked about this. I like Marxism for the optimism that it's shooting for such an optimistic future, but it's also very disconnected from the strategy that it will take to get there. And that's why we have people who are okay with accelerationism or right Passadism or those kinds of viewpoints where we are trying to stabilize power without having built power structures to replace or to fill the vacuum or to destabilize, right? That's how we should be directing our revolutionary attention, as at creating pockets of horizontal power that we control in the world, and those pockets of power being what destabilize the state and destabilize the status quo, rather than trying to go to war with the state, which will win that war, or we will exhaust our energies and our efforts and our human bodies to the end of maintaining the status quo of the state just grinding us into putty. Right, we'll just be playing into their playbook. Think that the conclusion... Yeah, okay, good. I think the conclusion of the thought fascism is liberal foreign policy brought domestic is that liberalism is fascism, but people don't notice until new people enter the othered category. Yes, that brings it home. I think that's a good way to think about it. Oh, that's not, you're up there. Because I'm getting a little bit behind. Not very far behind, though, so I'm okay. Diversity of self-defense tactics. Yes, right. And that's the building of power, is a diversity of self-defense tactics. And those self-defense tactics can be nonviolent, might not be, right? We need to be prepared for both, actually. And this is something that I've iterated over and over and over again. Whichever of these camps you want to be in, hop in that fucking camp. Get to work, right? Whichever you want to be in, hop in a camp and make sure that you're engaged in doing stuff. Graeber has a similar quote that goes along the lines of anarchy isn't as much of an ideology as action, where people act freely and unburdened from state control as if they already live in the society they want. This is something that I've heard Sophie Scott Brown say. Now, I don't know much about Sophie Scott Brown. I have not read any of their works so far. I've only been able to engage with some of the video content that they've made, some of the video lectures that they've done. But this is an idea, because she's a fan of Graeber as well, it seems. But this is an idea that I've heard that Sophie Scott Brown convey is anarchism actually isn't a political ideology at all. It exists only when and where people are doing the work, are engaged with making those values real life. That's where anarchism is. That's what anarchism is. And I'm probably putting words in her mouth, but I think that I'm not wrong with making this assertion, and whether or not Sophie Scott Brown agrees with it, I don't care. But I think that this idea is a good idea and is right. That when we are talking about the theory, when you sit down and read Malatesta, what you are doing is prefiguration, not anarchy. When you are reading Marxism and evaluating Marxism for not having enough focus on means ends unity, not understanding material conditions enough, not recognizing the dangers of hierarchies, that is not anarchism. You are engaging in prefiguration. You're not there yet. When you are doing stuff with other people in the world to make the world a different place because of your anarchist ideals, then you are an anarchist doing anarchism. But unless you are doing things in the world, unless it's praxis, then it's just theory, and it can't then therefore be anarchism. That's an idea I'd agree with. Haven't heard Posadism brought up in a while. Yeah, it pops up every now and then. Been waiting. Oh, wait. Welcome in, poor boy soul. Good to see you. Waiting on a stream since the last one, only over. Wait. Sleep. Been waiting on a stream since the last one, only to over. Oh, my stream. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry to keep you waiting, and I'm sorry that you missed the beginning of this one, but we haven't launched much into the content. What we have done is done a good job of coming back full circle. We've actually done the full circle already once today, and I think that we're ready to start the circle back over again. So good timing. And this, not this. This, no, not this. This, which you all still can't see. There we go. This is I think going to be a very good. This is going to argue a lot of the things that we have been talking about for the last 30 or 40 minutes, and it's going to explain how all of those things fit together in like 5 minutes. This is an amazing video, and I think that we're going to really get a kick out of it. So let me see if I can fix the view. Okay, let me just do this.
How do
real
revolutions
fast.
act?
Shh, stop. I'm not ready yet. Back it up. Click the wrong thing. Unlock. What's behind it? Oh, I can't tell where the... There we go. This one will work. Thank you all for your patience while the pro streamer here figures out how to resize their sources. Don't need to be nitpicky about it, huh? And I think that that's good. Oh, yeah, because we want to not block off the closed caption. There you go. I think that that'll be good. Good. Good.
how do revolutions actually work? In encouraging us to fight back, I commonly hear, well, there's no leadership. I need a guidebook. No one is telling us what to do. Some of this is valid concern. So let me be precise. There is a playbook, and some of it was written during the success of the Russian Revolution, if you pay attention. A few tens of thousands of organized Bolsheviks helped overthrow a 300-year-old empire of 160 million people. Let me show you how that structure actually worked, what caused people to rise, and where you might fit inside of it. So in February of 1917, the Bolshevik Party had only about 24,000 people. Note that the Russian Empire they were in had around 160 million people. That means the organized revolutionary core was only about 0.015% of the population. And still, 8 months later, they led the overthrow of the Tsarist state. So how does something so small move something that big? Lenin did not believe that every worker had to be a full-time revolutionary. He believed that a small organized core had to exist inside the working class. And in What Is to Be Done, he wrote, "The organization of the revolutionaries must..."
Sorry, I was just trying to pause it real quick so that oh man, I messed all kinds of stuff up. I was just trying to pause it real quick so that I could say, I really need to get a Lenin bust. I think that might... I need to make a streamer wish list, one of those kinds of things. I think that would be kind of fun. And that's probably what would be on. Things like books for me to read, because this is one of the works that I haven't read. And, you know, a bust of Lenin would also be pretty badass.
In What Is to Be Done, he wrote, "The organization of the revolutionaries must consist first and foremost of people whose profession is that of the revolutionary." So there is that small percentage of the professional revolutionaries who protect the movement from being crushed. The masses that make the force. I know many of you are saying, well, I can't do that. I wouldn't do that. Why would I do that? Perhaps you wouldn't be the person to do that. Lenin is telling you that most people are not this layer and were never meant to be. Now, they operated as a vanguard party. That layer is the vanguard, and it's not everyone. But that core are the people trained to coordinate, communicate, and hold things together when chaos hits. Lenin was very explicit that revolution had layers. In left-wing communism, he wrote, "The dictatorship of the proletariat is a stubborn struggle, bloody and bloodless, violent and peaceful, military and economic, educational and administrative, against the forces and traditions of the old society." That sentence is describing different kinds of fighters inside the same struggle. Some fight, some organize, some teach, some run logistics, some keep communities alive. And this is where your layers come from. You can visualize it like this. I went ahead and made a little diagram. I hope it'll help you visualize where you might fit in. Now there's the organized core, the professional revolutionaries, underground networks, printers, couriers, strike organizers. Then there's the wide sympathetic layer, the union workers, students, people who support the cause but are not, full-time militants. And then there's the mass general population, people who are not necessarily political but are pulled into action when crisis hits. Lenin explains when that mass suddenly moves, a revolution is impossible without a nationwide crisis. The crisis creates motion. The organized layers give it direction. Now, Rosa Luxemburg analyzed what happens when the crisis breaks open. The revolutionary dictatorship, that is, the victory of the proletariat, cannot be picked from a tree at the desired hour or caught falling from the sky. It can only occur as the end result of the proletariat's gradual, continual march towards power. Then she explains the rapture. Times of revolution rend the cage of legality open like pent-up steam splitting from its kettle. Politically and legally, the rule of the governmental authority, up to that moment, absolutism is destroyed, and the struggle of the proletariat can manifest its full might. So she's saying that revolutions begin when legality collapses, when food runs out, when war drags on, when the state loses control. We're seeing some of that now, aren't we? But one or all of those things will spark the masses to flood in, and the organized layers determine what happens next. Individually, as far as feeling like you may not fit in any of this, I hear a lot of, well, I'm sick, I'm scared, I'm poor, I'm not trained. I want to remind and encourage you that Lenin lived with chronic illness and later severe neurological damage. Che Guevara had crippling asthma, yet fought in a jungle. There's even Helen Keller, who was blind and deaf and still organized for socialism. Now, all of these individuals lived in different circumstances and material conditions, but no one was 100% prepared. But they were needed. And Karl Marx made the rule that made this possible, from each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs. Lenin also answered this logic directly. Again, in What is to be Done, he said, "The workers, the overwhelming majority, are capable of displaying enormous energy and self-sacrifice in strikes and in street battles with the police and troops, and are capable of determining the whole outcome of our movement. History is not waiting for everyone to become brave or educated or ready. It's waiting for a crisis. When that moment comes, people will be pulled into motion whether they planned for it or not. The only thing that can determine whether chaos becomes liberation is whether enough of us are ready to know which layer we belong in and what we can do, what we have to provide if capable. You do not need to be perfect. You need to be positioned and believe that a better world is possible."
Good. I'll probably want to watch the whole thing again. It's really quick. So that's not going to be problematic. And there's several things that I would like to draw specific attention to. But first, is it Nikki or Nikhail? Or some other pronunciation that's not either of those? Thoughts on North Korea, Juche? So far, I like what I've seen, especially when it comes to actual praxis with regards to this idea. I don't have enough experience with the theory, and I haven't done any kind of deep dive to that's from what I've understand is there's a lot of statism and nationalism that are associated with Juche usually, and it also relies, again, so far as I understand, on hierarchical structures or assumes hierarchical structures. But again, I will say that I've seen a lot of excellent praxis come out of communities that are that center around Juche, and a lot of the comrades that I have met that that are in the orbit of that ideology are comrades that I would be happy to work with. In a lot of ways, for a lot of reasons, for whatever kinds of ends, right? There's depending on the kind of situation, that might be a tent that I would get in, right? If we were getting in tents with people, right? This analogy works, right? As opposed to the big Democratic tent. That's I'm using the party tent analogy. I mean, it's So what I've seen, it's kind of a mixed bag. I haven't investigated or invested enough time and energy to offer any kind of substantive critique of Juche at all. So it's something that I'm aware of, but not I don't know enough about that I'm gonna say much more than I've said. But I hope that you like that answer.
And this is where your layers come from. You can visualize it like this. I went ahead and made a little diagram.
Good. Let me see if I can zoom in on this diagram. Of course not. There's a thing here where I can link to it. Nope. How can I zoom in here? Oh, I can do this. Since it's already, I forgot to lock it anyway, so no. We'll just mess it up real good. We'll mess it up real good. And then it won't matter. So, find out, decide where you fit best in this scheme, right? That's revolutionary structure. This gives us a good understanding, a good visual representation of the idea of diversity of tactics, right? There's going to be some kind of organized core, people who are professional revolutionaries, people who understand how state power works and are actively working to destabilize that by creating their own horizontal power structures all day, every day, and they have been doing that. They're not waiting for revolution, big R, revolution. We should also make sure that we are contrasting those kinds of things, right? Your organized core are revolutionaries who are building a revolutionary already right now and have already been doing those things. They're not waiting for a big R revolution. They understand the material conditions and that these things take change and that they need some kind of catalyst. Right? The sympathetic base in the masses, these are things that are going to mobilize when material conditions are right, and do mobilize when material conditions are right. Yeah, aka the catalyst group, right? Let me read this. The main thing about Juche and really any Marxist attempting, any Marxist attempt is that critiquing the oppressor's methods of resistance sides with the oppressors, not about what I, as an American, think about it. If it was, that would make me imperialist. Right. Let me make sure I'm understanding this before I say right. The main thing about Juche, any Marxist attempt is that critiquing the oppressor's method of resistance sides with the oppressors. So when we are engaging in, there was a typo, oppressed methods of resistance. Oh, gotcha. And twist, no, okay, thank you. I saw that there was a typo and I didn't even bother to read that part. Okay, oppressed methods. Gotcha. Yeah, okay. No, that's my bad. I mean, you did the right thing. You put the correction in chat. You did it in ample time before I even started reading it. That's all my bad. The main thing about Juche and really any Marxist attempt is that critiquing the oppressed's methods of resistance sides with the oppressors. Right. Yes. 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 And that's something that I completely agree with. That is an attitude that tells you that if you are punching left, you are doing the wrong thing. If you are critiquing other people who are resisting oppression, if you are critiquing people who are resisting oppression, you are helping the oppressor, right? And that is an attitude I completely get behind. 100% agree, 100% sympathetic with that idea. But this is a good way for us to remember that. I guess I'm talking to me. Right, I'm speaking to myself right now. This is a helpful reminder that it is not. I am not the kind of person who can be a professional revolutionary all the time. Sometimes I really, really wish that I could. So this wish is a fantasy. We've talked about this before. If I wanted to do that, then I would make it a reality. I would reprioritize my life. I would reorganize the way that I think about the world to the ends that I can, to whatever degree that I must, that I can accomplish these ends of being this kind of person. And I'm not committed to that. I enjoy being a college professor, which takes a way that I engage with leftism and sharing that information and making sure that we are working out the kinks and that people understand, that people have the opportunity to engage with the theory in meaningful ways on their own personal journeys to wherever they are going. Right? That's, as a streamer, what I'm trying to do is help other leftists while I am helping to educate myself, right? I'm helping other leftists to engage with the theory in ways that they may not be prepared to. I am a classically academically trained philosopher who has dedicated most of their adult reading life to reading about social and political politics, social and political theory, civil rights theory, and rights theory in general, right? That these are my bread and butter. That's my emphasis. That's the thing that I am the most an expert on. And if I can share that expertise and help other people on their prefigurative path, then I'm in this graph. Right, I am in this visualization somewhere. I am a part of the revolutionary energy, and I am part of the movement already. I'm just positioning myself appropriately, right? That's it, and it's sometimes hard for me to keep that in mind. You know, when I'm laying in bed trying to go to sleep and I'm thinking to myself, well, I could have, instead of playing an hour of Genshin this afternoon, I could have done this, or I could have gone somewhere and done something else, or I could have been trying to organize. And no, I really don't have the time and energy for that. You know, and I need to stop emotionally beating myself up for not being able to do more. If I could do more, I would. I fucking promise, right? If I could, but sometimes it's hard to remember to keep that in mind. This is a long, arduous process that will probably take the rest of my life before we see a capital R revolution. You know, and I don't know what to hope. Right? I don't know whether to hope for a capital R revolution before that, or whether I should not hope for a capital R revolution. Right? I don't know what's going to be for the best. I don't know what material conditions are going to determine of us, require of us, because that's what matters. What I'd rather doesn't, right? But we should be directed at the right kinds of ends. So good. What was the other? There was another aspect that I really wanted to highlight on, and I can't remember what it was. I got distracted with the. I should have been making notes. Maybe it was back here. I'm going to back it up and play some of the video again and see if I can remember what it was that the other thing that I wanted to talk about.
This layer, and were never meant to be. Now, they operated as a vanguard party. That layer is...
That's it. I knew it wouldn't take me long. Okay, so one thing that I do think would be helpful to talk about is vanguardism in general. There we go, good. Vanguardism in general is a mistake. It is a mistaken tactic to adopt, and we should be mindful about vanguardism. So when we are talking about vanguardism, what I mean is people believing that they can spearhead the revolution. Now that's not how the content creator that we were just watching is referring to vanguardism. I'm making a distinction here. We'll take just red and black flavored Leninists. You mean anarcho-syndicalists? Yeah, in this space, it might actually be kind of a hot take. But please expound. I'd love to hear. Love to hear what you have to say about it. But the idea of vanguardism is that, all right. So if we want to look for an example of vanguardism, it's worship of people like Che Guevara, or worship of what was the other? I had another example in my head. Lenin, right? Worship of Lenin, worship of Che Guevara, right? People that have quote unquote accomplished revolution, right? And it's really, really important to keep in mind that after events had happened and literally hundreds of thousands of people's actions have come together to create the momentum that has accomplished revolutionary action, that people, after the fact, sift through the details and they find reasons for it to have happened, right? People build a narrative about events and believe that come to recognize certain actions or certain people, usually particular, as being linchpin, as being pivotal for the movement. And this is a mistake in every way. It is just strongman theory. And if you're not familiar with strongman theory, it's fucking garbage. It's bad. It's what has given us the cult of personality that is Trump, that is the ecosphere around Trump, where he can just make up bullshit and people will argue that bullshit is factual, that happened in real life, despite the fact that they can see with their own eyes that Good was murdered by an ICE agent. They're still going to tout the thing, the truth, that is the party line, that is the cult of personality, that is Trump. That's a product of strongman theory. That's a product of believing that certain people or certain strong men change the world. And that's it. There is no other way to change the world other than some strong man, some dude is going to stand up and make everything better, solve all the problems, is going to be really brave and strong. That's bullshit. That is a bullshit idea. It doesn't work. That doesn't cohere with real states of affairs in the real world. That's not it. Do I think that Lenin is important to study his ideas and his theory and the kinds of things that actually worked? Yes, I do. But I don't think that Lenin was necessary. Revolution is inevitable or it's not. Right? We don't get there because of of a strong man or a few strong men. We get there because of all of us. And there's lots of reasons why we want to avoid vanguardism. And I think one of the most blatant examples in history that we can look to is the Black Panther Party. Right? It only required for the CIA to assassinate a few individuals and to incarcerate a few other individuals, because the whole Black Panther movement was built on the backs of a few black men who didn't want to share that power, actually, who wouldn't share that power with women or wouldn't share that power with other minorities, who refused to give up their position at the tip of the spear. That's one of the greatest flaws, the greatest failings of the Black Panther Party was this, that they looked up to vanguard leaders to spearhead the revolution, which is why it didn't happen. Because all you have to do is assassinate a few people or incarcerate a few people. Spearhead's taken care of, right? If you build power structures that destabilize the state, those power structures are going to grow and grow and grow and grow, not because there's somebody leading, somebody driving the car. They're going to grow because you've created powerful horizontal power structures that help people and that prove that they help people through propaganda of the deed and praxis, and prove that they work. And so people are going to be drawn to those things, to want to help do those things because they're worthwhile. And that's what makes the difference. The Union, the way they talk about it is just a vanguard party. What do you mean the union? As in unions in general, or is there a union to which you're referring that I'm not picking up the? I'm not sure what you mean. One thing that leftists need to realize is that great man theory works the other way too, believing in criticizing all that exists, but if you blame everything that the USSR did wrong on Stalin, you are great manning him in reverse. Remember, it's not just one man who makes or breaks a revolution, but a mixture of multiple people and material conditions. Fantastic point, Kaimatara. Absolutely. Its ends justify the means mentally, right. Also using dictatorship in dictatorship of the proletariat. Right. Good. Good. What else did I want to say with regards to vanguardism? No, I think I nailed it, right? Keep everything horizontal. Don't let people be at the head. Well, that's one of the things. Good. That would be a good tie-in. That's one of the things that was covered in this book too. Come Hell or High Water. This is a book that was put out by AK Press. Yeah, by Delphina Benucci and Richard Singer, and it's very helpful. I thought this was going to be a book on how to organize and how to get consensus when you can't get people all on board, but it's really not. Really, it's more a book about helping you or the organizer, right? Whoever is doing the organizing, and that should be everyone, not just one or a few people, right? How organizers who are coming together to try to accomplish goals together. But when you have certain kinds of behaviors that interfere with the consensus reaching process, or people who try to take over the process to gain their own power, or when people try to co-opt your organizing so that they can become a vanguard. Those are kinds of things, those kinds of toxic behaviors are discussed in this book, how to identify them, how to catch them in the early stages, and how to diffuse those without alienating the people that you're working with, right? Because you want to be able to say to people, no, you can't do things that way, actually, right? But you want to be able to say no in a way that they still want to keep engaging with the process and still want to help work towards consensus. Because when you alienate people that you're working with, you are not getting consensus. You are forming some kind of coercive power, whether or not you intend to. And that's one of the other things that's outlined in this book, because there are bad ways to respond to bad actors, and those bad ways of responding to bad actors will also undermine your efforts just as much as not doing anything and letting that person derail your efforts. The Marxists I've talked to that weren't in it for the aesthetics or had a fave theory daddy tend to have weird or broad definitions of dictatorship, party, proletariat, vanguard, such that they line up pretty closely with the Anselm theory of revolution in general, union, or a syndicate of unions that seize and hold the means of production in a similar manner. Well, and see, this is one of those things where I'm not sure where some ideas that haven't been fully ironed out. For example, I would have a hard time calling myself a Leninist. Not because I don't like Lenin's work or ideas. Lenin is one of my faves, actually. But I wouldn't call myself a Leninist, mostly because of the other kinds of people who do call themselves Leninists, who I fear might not understand Lenin in the same way that I do, right? And so I don't know. Thinking. Also not taking Lenin at his word more than what he actually did in power. Well, when it comes to Lenin I don't think really did much while in power that was inconsistent with Lenin's writings and with Lenin's theory, right? And Stalin is, I think, the exact opposite, the good contrast. Lenin, I feel like, is somebody who wrote ideas about how they felt the world was, and then applied those ideas in revolutionary ways, sometimes maybe missed the mark, but was always pointed in the right direction. Whereas with Stalin, it's something that I've posed before is I'm not sure if Stalin was writing works that he thought Lenin would like so that he could get into Lenin's good graces, or if Stalin believed those things when he was younger, but then when he got into power, he changed his mind and did things completely different. Because what Lenin wrote about in his theory is pretty good, or what Stalin wrote about in his theory is pretty good stuff. What he did doesn't have anything to do with any of the things that he wrote about, right? In his earlier works, when he was writing about revolution and socialism and communism and what we should do, then he went and did a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't coherent with the things that he had written. I feel like, and that's my take. Maybe maybe other people disagree with that, but that's well, I don't think you're picking fights. My point, though, that Leninist theory is modernly interpreted as a dictatorship being democratically and under revocable control of the entirety of the proletariat. Just point out that any concentration of power is still a concentration regardless of the color of your flag. Right, well, see, that's I think that might be one of the big misunderstandings that's happening here, because with anarchism in general, and this is true for anarcho-syndicalism too, there is not a concentration of power. There is not at any point a concentration of power, even in unions that organize themselves in kinds of ways. Well, not necessarily, right? Is not necessarily, is not necessarily, could or could not be. And that I think is what needs to be worked out. I would think that anarcho-syndicalists would advocate for that the workers could control the unions directly, and should, right? And that's even if we look at models like Paracon, which is a million steps away from even socialism, let alone communism. If we look at systems like Paracon, there's almost no concentration of power that actually takes place in any meaningful sense, right? We have, well, let's talk about a different kind of let me try again. Right. So, it might be that we have different ideas about what power means, right? When you say the consolidation of power, if it were the case, for example, that we could next month turn the American economy to a Paracon kind of system, where we would still have regulatory markets, but those regulatory markets would be directly controlled by people who have control of those levers. And people don't have control of those levers directly. People have control of those levers by being a part of collectives in which they find themselves organized by their workplaces. And their workplaces are democratized. So their workplaces, they have free democratic control in those workplaces. The workplaces have networks with all of the other industries, with all of the other businesses, with all of the other supply chains, with every other part of the economy. All of the parts of the economy are all linked together. All of those links are all independent decision makers, but those independent decision makers also, who are collectives, those independent decision makers, the businesses, quote unquote, because they wouldn't really be businesses in the way that we think of businesses today, but they would have to organize themselves together to affect different kinds of changes in the economy, in the market. So it would have to be hundreds of thousands of people all working together towards common goals for us to affect change. And in this system, we have power everywhere, but none of the power has the ability to consolidate and make itself coercive. That's one of the problems when we are trying to envision tomorrow's future, tomorrow's options, tomorrow's material conditions. When we're trying to think about that, that the way that we think about power has been corrupted. Power isn't necessarily bad or evil or a problem when it's organized and collected, even if it collects itself in a mass. If that power is directed by the will of hundreds of thousands of people to the needs of those hundreds of thousands of people, that power is just good, right? Being able to feed people, being able to house people, those are forms of power that are non-coercive, that don't create systems of power dynamics in which one person is over another in hierarchical structures. And that's with Jane is going to completely reject the idea that an anarcho-syndicalist society would have power structures around which you could have power coalescing, growing in a way that that power can act in dominating ways against other powers in culture and society. Because that idea is incoherent with Jane's understanding of what anarcho-syndicalism is. Those two things are mutually exclusive, right? So that might be some of the disconnect. And if I put words in your mouth incorrectly, Jane, please correct me. If I have misrepresented your ideas, please. Matt, welcome in. It's good to see you. I was talking for a long time. I didn't realize you snuck in. Good to see you. We're gonna be talking about the one of the things that you put in the Discord later today. Organize the structure, put the same levers of power in place for the union, federation, syndicate, chairman, whatever. I mean, that's and that's Let me keep reading some stuff, and then I'll have some stuff to say. Difference would be if the positions aren't structurally locked in which the workers set the mandates before delegating. Right. Yet monopoly on power bad, even on a small scale. You don't want one person being the only one in your community knowing the skills, right? Creates power disparity, right? And that's right. That's right. Exactly. If we have built our structures correctly, if anarchists have built their structures correctly, then there is no way to compare that to other forms of red, black, and well, I don't know. You can, because all of the terms are flexible. because words are not set in stone. They're not formal things. They're actually dynamic and situational. And anyways, position being locked in, whether structurally or ideologically, are more dependent on material conditions and the specifics of attempt rather than some platonic idea. Structurally or ideally are more dependent on democratic and revocable control too, but if that actually happens, just depends on how the roles but if that actually happens, just depends on how the dice roll. I was preparing to say a whole bunch of stuff, but I don't think I'm going to say a whole bunch of stuff, actually, in response to the conversation that's going on in chat. Yeah, no worries, you're fine. Real points trying to create a rigid taxonomy of revolution is intellectual masturbation. Yes. Wizard's Bread Book just said here what I was about to say. Well, not quite what I was going to say, but what I was preparing to say a whole bunch of things. And as I was organizing my thoughts, the realization occurred to me is that the hair splitting that we are engaged in currently is not helpful or productive or beneficial or really, well, not entirely, right? I don't want to say that there's no point to splitting these kinds of hairs, but I don't think that splitting those hairs right now in this context is helpful for us right now in the context of what we're trying to discuss. Right, if we had the luxury of waxing philosophical about these ideas and we didn't have to figure out what the fuck to do about the fact that we have the rise of a fascist regime that's about to take control of the United States of America and maybe maybe start annexing other land masses, right? I think that we need rather to simply be committed to working together if our end goals are closely enough aligned. And it seems like they are, and we can worry about the splitting of the hairs down the line later when we are in a situation when we're waiting for the dice to roll, right? When you're talking about Leninist claim, they want democratic and irrevocable control, blah 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 blah. But if that actually happens, just depends on how the dice roll, right? And I would want to push back on that a little bit, but not a lot, because I believe that we are largely determined beings and largely determined by our material conditions, which is what you meant with the dice roll. My pushback would be, well, we have the power to change, to influence the way that the dice fall, right? And that's what we're doing here, is we're figuring out ways that we can make this thing and that fleshy thing on the other side of the screen here, this fleshy thing and that fleshy thing on the other side of the screen, we're trying to get those things to be revolutionary things, so that when the dice are being rolled, we are positioned to influence the dice roll, to ensure that certain precautions are put in place, that we are engaging with praxis, with ends unity in mind, right? That we're trying to create a certain kind of world, but we can't create a certain kind of world by using the oppressor's tactics, by using imperialism tactics, by using tactics of patriarchy. We cannot use those tools and create a world that doesn't have those things. If we use those tools, the world that we make has those things, right? So that's where we are. Masturbation can be fun and relieve stress. It's not a bad thing. Yes, I would agree with that. And in some forms of intellectual masturbation are completely fine, right? Like I said, if we found ourselves in a situation where we had the privilege and luxury to take our time and to simply, right, if these were ideas that we were having in theory, because we didn't have to worry about the pressing material conditions of poverty and famine and homelessness and genocide and fascism, right? Those things are real and they're very time sensitive, and we need to be more directed at that than waxing philosophical, unfortunately. Welcome in, Julius Cheshire. Good to have you. Otipim this walk. I'm gonna need help with that pronunciation. I brutalized that. I'm very sorry. I will need help with that pronunciation. Otipimistuak. Otipimistuak. Otimpimstawak. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. What decolonization and land back would look like to you. Well, the first thing that I would want to say in response is that it doesn't matter what it would look like to me, because my ancestors hailed from Scotland. So that's my land, and how I feel land back should be carried out is, it would be just an opinion of somebody that doesn't matter, right? But that's not what you're asking, right? At all, right? I understand I don't have the authority or the relationship with the land to make that kind of determination. But from speaking with lots of indigenous people and from getting indigenous perspectives on what land back would look like, then what I believe land back would or should look like is the abolition of the United States, first and foremost. There is now no longer United States. Gone, done, that's over with. Just period. I imagine that also borders would disappear. We wouldn't have borders between our states, and we probably wouldn't have borders at the end of our nation states. So that would depend on working with other nations too. And then I imagine that indigenous people would focus on what would work for the land, right? How their ancestors were passed down the land knowledge, the survival knowledge of each geographical location, and those people would set about repairing the land and restoring our balance to our ecological balance. So businesses and stuff would probably have to pack up and move. But I believe that the vast majority of Americans would probably be more or less unimpacted. Right? Other than they would no longer be paying rent. They would no longer live in a capitalist society. If we accomplish land back, then a lot of the other things that we're talking about with regard to this revolution against a fascist regime, none of that matters. Like, land back is the goal. that is the finish line. That's part of the pillars that we focus on in this channel, because it's got to all be part of the same thing. We can't get liberation from capitalism without a more authentic relationship to the land, and pretending like some of us get to own some of it while some of us don't, and that none of us have a natural relationship to it. We are in dominion over it. All of those ideas have to go away. Oh, I am talking about Scottish land back too, but that's another. I think you have to say in the diaspora, yeah. Land should be for the commons and no ownership, right? Yeah, I'm just saying I would defer. I don't think I would be the boss of any decision making in the event that land back happened. I was just trying to be humble about my relationship to LandBack. I completely support LandBack. It's one of my emotes for a reason, and it's one of my free channel emotes. I think anybody can do this, even if you're not subbed, and it is that way on purpose. It's one of the things that I think is the most fucking important when it comes to revolutionary goals, right? Housing, food sovereignty, access to healthcare, non-racist gender liberation, LandBack. These are the things. If we have these things, we have built a better tomorrow. Mission accomplished, right? That's the end. That's the end goal. What about Canada? Should my people's tribe return to their pre-Columbian borders? Well, I don't know that makes sense, right? If it would make sense for your people, right? I think that's it wouldn't be somebody's decision. It would be a negotiation. If that would be the best for your people, for them to return to those borders, then sure. But I'm not sure that that would be the best for your people, and I'm not sure that your people would all agree that that would be the best for their people, right? But that would matter. Whether or not your people wanted that and thought that that would be good for them, and whether their neighbors thought that that would be good for them too, right? But it would be, there would be negotiation, hopefully toward consensus. Indigenous people have been reaching consensus on this continent for hundreds of thousands of years, which I'm sure you know. I'm not telling you anything, right? But you know, they would just work together to build consensus about what is best for each people, for each nation. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, LandBack, my LandBack emote's one of my favorites. Oh, I was like, wait a minute, that looks like Jam Tomb's LandBack emote. And it is. I keep forgetting that Jam Tomb changed their name to Ghost Pepper. So that is Jam Tomb's, aka Ghost Pepper's LandBack emote, which is also a really awesome emote. But what if a lot of my people don't want Canada to be dismantled, or they don't want to do mass deportation against settlers? Well, and I don't think that, and I don't want to speak for Indigenous nations or Indigenous members of any nations, but I don't think by and large most Indigenous people are interested at all in deporting colonizers. I don't think that that's at all part of the solution. I don't think that that's a part of LandBack, right? That kind of doesn't make sense to me, to try and erase what is. That's and I don't want to, because what I want to say here is that I've studied enough Indigenous philosophy. I've spoken with enough Indigenous people, and I've engaged with the ideas of Indigenous sovereignty enough that I feel comfortable making the claim. This is what I would like to say. I'm not sure that I should, but I feel like it is the case that most Indigenous people don't want colonizers to be resettled elsewhere or kicked off the land. That just doesn't cohere with the Indigenous philosophies and the Indigenous people that I've spoken to about LandBack. I mean, there might be some people, and there might be some disagreement about that, but I think by and large, yeah, as a white person didn't choose to be here, and this is a reality that Indigenous people recognize, that where a person is, they have a right to be. Right? If you are living somewhere, you have a right to be there. And that's right, that's Melt ice. Fuck yeah. Welcome in. Great first great first chat, chatter. Fantastic. Welcome in. Two-Tone Twitch. And that's an awesome name. Are you into ska by any chance? I'm also a bit of a ska fan. Right. Yeah, it's so easy. Right, but welcome in. It's good to have you. Personally, if Indigenous people wanted me gone, I'd be happy to go to Ireland. And that's something that I've said too, Matt. I think that the last time that LandBack came up, somebody was like, well, if we're going to give land back, what if they say you can't stay here anymore? I was like, then I would go back to Scotland. Then I would go back to my land and I would connect with my ancestors, and I bet the Indigenous people here would be excited about me doing that and would probably help me get there instead of just booting me out, right? They would be excited about my reunification of my cultural heritage and be excited about the opportunity to help me achieve that part of my self-fulfillment. Right? They would just be like, yeah, fucking awesome. Go to Scotland. Yeah. Right? Go claim your land back. You know, it's just, guys didn't choose to be here, but the guys shouldn't feel guilty about that. That's the whole point of land acknowledgements. Yeah. And that's, something that we talk about an awful lot in this chat is, or in this channel is white guilt. It's been a while since I've had a white guilt conversation. But white guilt doesn't help anybody. Feeling guilty about what your ancestors did doesn't help anybody. Right? And in this regard, one of the stories that I like to tell about myself is, as Scottish Celt, my people were colonized by Britain a long time ago, and most of my cultural heritage was entirely erased. Burned, humans were burned at the stake, books were burned, temples and holy sites were desecrated and absolutely destroyed, and my people were successfully assimilated. And as a part of the price of my people's assimilation is my ancestors ordered their own family, their own kin. My ancestors ordered our own kin to cross over from Scotland to the Americas, to the North American continent, part of what we now call Canada, and to wage war with the Indigenous people who were living there. So it's entirely possible, Julius Cheshire, it's entirely possible that your ancestors literally went to war to annihilate my ancestors, who were sent from Scotland in waves by Britain to this continent to die, basically, because we didn't stand any chance. And my ancestors that sent their kin across the water to do this knew without a doubt, because we were in contact with those Indigenous peoples. We were aware of their survival life knowledge and aware that there was no way we could engage in a military campaign there, but we didn't have a choice. It was a sword over there or the spear over there, right? Between a rock and a hard place, what do you do? But not all of my ancestors were eradicated by potentially your ancestors. I'm not sure of your geographic region, so I'm just kind of making assumptions. But not all of my ancestors were eradicated by the Indigenous people. In a lot of cases, the Indigenous people here on the North American continent felt really bad for the Scots who were sent across the water to do battle in snow and tundra that they were not prepared to live or to battle in. And so many of my ancestors, instead of being wiped out, they were actually saved and adopted by the indigenous people. They were taken in and given a new life in a new society, given the opportunity to be contributing members of their nations, right? Which is really fucking awesome if you think about it. Like, what an amazing, just but anyways, I like to tell this story because I am a colonized people. I am of a colonized land, and my people was fully, nearly successfully assimilated. That any remnant of Celtism remains is miraculous. And then my people engaged in the colonial expansion of empire, put our blood literally into it, right? At the behest of our imperial overlords. So I don't know. It's knowing your history is good, right? But I don't feel guilty about any of that, because I didn't make any of those decisions. I'm aware of the history, and I am in awe of the history. And I think that having the historical context is important and valuable. But I don't think that those things are determining. They don't define who I am or what my people are supposed to be today. We get to decide for ourselves, right? Who we are and the kind of world that we want to build. Excuse me. I'm back a little bit because I didn't choose. In theory, yes. In practice, yeah, I probably will want to say some words about that in a second. Let me highlight that. They're in their little safe space watching Asmund right now, or that little weasel Fuentes. Oh, okay. That's your. I gotcha. I was like, what's that in context to? But you were responding to somebody else, and then that all makes sense in context to what you're responding to. Believing if that's what the indigenous people wanted, wouldn't mind having the culture being American erased. Yes, I also wouldn't mind America being erased. This nation is built on lies and genocide. And I think that we can do without. How can we move forward and have nation building if we only focus on the bad? Fantastic. Fantastic point / question. It's really a question that you're asking, but it's also a point that you're making with the question. How can we move forward and have nation building if we only focus on the bad? Now, for clarification, I don't like the idea of nation building because we should be people, not nations. Nations don't have the right to exist. States don't have the right to exist. People do. But I'm, that's. Yeah, why did the British feel such a right to the world? Well, divine rule, I think, actually has a lot to do with that, answering that question, poor boy soul. That the divine right to rule is what gave British people the idea that their project was ordained by God, right? They were the propaganda of their state gave them a mindset that, right, the way that the state propagandized them for the state's power and control. And it's very similar, very analogous to what we see in the United States right now, right? The manifest destiny and that we are a Christian nation gives people in America the idea that we literally have the right to own and conquer and dominion over all the things. To find fascists using front them, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have wake up people? But I have to wake up people before the invest further into Nazism from these manipulating grifters. Absolutely. Two-Tone Twitch. If you're out there looking for fascists to pick fights with, then you're doing the good work too. Good looking out. You know, that's praxis. Something that I don't talk about as much as I used to back in the day is there are ways to engage online digitally with praxis. And that is, I think, a really good example. Because fascists are out there going after minorities, after people who are just trying to survive, right? People who are just trying to be on the internet. And a lot of those people are not equipped to combat constant abuse and fascism. So the more people who are going around trying to pick fights with those fascist assholes, right, then you're getting their time and attention. And they have less time and attention to pick on the vulnerable people on the internet who are just trying to exist. So that's praxis in my book. Acknowledgement is the first and biggest step to moving forward. Moving on is ignoring it. Good. That's you're talking about the land acknowledgement. There's personally I like to do the opposite of nation building. Right, exactly. Yeah. Call me anti-state or anti-government, whatever. Yeah, me too. You have a good rest of your day, Two-Tone. Hope you come back and see us. Have a good one. You've probably been gone for like 10 minutes now. I'm so behind in chat, but... right. Yeah, Christianity. Hey, yeah, Christianity. I think I differ on this as I don't care about my ancestors. I don't think that it's necessary for you to be grounded in your ancestry, but I will say I think that there's some advantage to it. But it's also not something that's for everyone. So, you know, you're an awesome human and you have a really great material analysis, and you know, I don't think that you need to change. So I don't. Yeah, I think that's fine if you don't have a connection to your ancestors. If you're fine with not having a connection to your ancestors, cool, right? You know, that's one of those. Whatever works for you, cool. And I'm not gonna crap on that. I'm not going to pee in your Cheerios. But alternatives to nations and states would allow for large-scale political organization. It would allow for us to exclude unwanted groups. That is a very big question that will take me... welcome in, Human Wrongs. It'll probably take me a minute to answer that. Give me a second. Let me get caught up on chat, and I will address that. I'll answer your question. Stick around, and I will answer your question. My people are starting to take back their heritage, not just in the diaspora. We turn to fascist cops. Wait. My people are starting to take back their heritage, not just in the diaspora. We turn to fascist cops in the diaspora. I think there's something there I'm missing. Just holy shit! I just realized from my earlier argument about violent resistance, we as colonial subjects are in a perpetual trolley problem. Yes, yes, 100%. We are in a perpetual trolley problem. We are on both sides of the track. The white leftists are arguing over whether to pull the lever or not. That is true only if that setup, in that setup, the where the break in the trolley line is a loop. I agree with that setup, but only if, because either way the trolley's coming for everyone. Either way the trolley goes, it's eventually coming for everyone. And I think that that's kind of more true, but you're not wrong about the initial setup, that it is a large trolley problem, and it's a continual trolley problem. Minute to minute, day after day, every day, we are choosing the necropolitics, right? We are just liberals. By we, I mean the status quo right now. Liberalism is choosing to keep the track on the track it is, so that it is affecting mostly only indigenous, black, and brown people, right? That's and turning the lever the other way just means that now white people is in the mix, right? And eventually, if we just let the trolley go either direction, it doesn't matter, because it's going to come around full circle and take everybody out anyway. There's comfort in reclaiming erased heritage, but I am distrustful of white leftists who make it their entire personality, regardless of the oppression ancestors faced. Modern white Americans were born to privilege, right? I think that that's true too, but well, yes and no. So, well, and what you're saying is yes and no. So I'm saying yes and no with you. Wizard's Bread book, because part of white guilt also has to do with white fragility. And white fragility is actually kind of a larger problem that interferes with the ability for white people to recognize what they have as privilege, despite the overwhelming evidence, right? And, we should also give credit to Cedric Brown, who gave us the theory of strategic ignorance. I don't think it's Brown. And I guess it's not really super important who coined the phrase, but I like to remember the thing. Cedric Robinson. No, that's not it either. That's Black Marxism. I'll have to look it up, because that's going to bother me. I'm not going to look it up right now, but I will find out that information. So there was a philosopher who I wanted to say coined this phrase in, well, about 100 years ago. I can't remember when, but the idea is strategic ignorance, right? That it would be inconceivable that anybody could live in the system of apartheid that we have, the two systems, the two legal systems, the two policing systems, the two banking systems and economic systems that exist for white people and for everybody else in the United States. It would be inconceivable that anybody could navigate this system and not understand what privilege is and that they have it when one has it. For white people to be able to maintain the facade of ignorance requires of them a strategic kind of ignorance where they have to know. They have to know what information to strategically avoid to not have to come face to face with the reality that they are living a privileged life, and that privilege directly translates into disprivilege or disadvantage for other people who are not like them. But I'm getting kind of off topic. I'm not really, but anyways. Like the Anglo... I like the Anglophonies. Just do dislike how a lot of them feel like they need to leave the nation we build together instead of turning it into a symbol of unity between our people. Yes, right. That's more the kind of world that I want to build, where we recognize that we have differences and that we work together to make those differences valuable and important and salient and meaningful, rather than differences being the reason why we cannot work together. That's the kind of world I want to build. And I finally caught back up to human wrongs. Question. Seems to be like a lot of back and forth going on. Okay. So I'm going to get caught up on the back and forth a little bit. But first, well, in fact, I'm going to do this. Okay. Gonna pin that message real fast. That's the answer. Giving every trans girl a gun. That's the answer. I don't think I'm going to be able to top that. There you go. No notes, no critiques. No, seriously. What alternatives to nations and states would allow for large-scale political organizing? It would allow us to exclude unwanted groups. There is a lot of assumptions in this, right? That there would be a need or desire to exclude unwanted groups in the first place, right? That seems like the wrong foot to be off. When you're trying to get the ball rolling on how we're going to problem solve. Right, and this has to do with means ends unity, right? If what we want to build tomorrow is the kind of world which doesn't exclude people, why would we include necessarily on purpose mechanisms for exclusion of people? Because we shouldn't exclude people. We shouldn't exclude anyone. Now, we might want to hold some people accountable if those people are fascist or are Nazis or are racists or want to do harm to other people because of other arbitrary reasons. But we don't have to exclude them from our society in order to have a society in which we just don't allow those ideas any breadth. Right? That's first off. We don't need any kind of system of organizing that necessarily has mechanisms for exclusion. That would be the first place I would start. Locally sustainable, decentralized communities and coalition. I mean, yes, that's it. I highly doubt the viability of such a thing. Of such a what thing? Nations should exist because not all of us indigenous groups were the same and lived in harmony. Right. The Siska found the Cree the Huron fought the Iroquois, they weren't the same nation. If we dismantle the idea of nations, then there will be no Cree or Siska nation, which is right. So Julius Cheshire, you are correct, right? You are using nations in a different way than I thought. Right. I find nations to be synonymous with the state, and nations to be a reason to have nationalist sympathies, right? To have an idea that our nation is the better nation, as opposed to that's when you use the word nation, that was the first knee-jerk thought that I had. But you are absolutely correct that we want to maintain identities, people's identities, and that's the language difference that I would use rather than referring to those nations as nations. I would say that those nations are peoples, right? But I don't want to tell people what to call themselves. Right? Anyways, but your point is taken, and it's a really good point. I mean, by most definitions of capitalism, it has certainly at least managed to demonstrate its capacity to exist in modern world, whereas the other proposal is not. Wrong. Human wrongs. When you say this, that capitalism has certainly managed to demonstrate its capacity to exist, that's wrong. Flat out, that is absolutely wrong. Other systems of organization existed in human history for hundreds of thousands of years. Capitalism has only been around for a few hundred years and is a dumpster fire. It is a dumpster fire and is only still around because of socialist programs like the New Deal from FDR and austerity and police states. Those are the reasons why capitalism still exists.
Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Look at all these slave masters.
Right. It's just that it's such a wrong premise. It is just an unbelievably wrong premise for you to say capitalism is fine and proves that it can work, and all of those other competing systems prove that they don't work. That is inconsistent with history. Other systems other than capitalism existed for hundreds of thousands of years. Historically, we know that that is true. Capitalism has been around for a few hundred years and is a dumpster fire. There are theories of nationality that aren't tied to statecraft. Yeah, that's what I would argue, that there are ideas of nationality that are not necessarily tied to statecraft. I have a hard time separating those ideas. I see those nations as necessarily problematic, but I think that Julius Cheshire has a legitimate pushback. But the concepts are not the same, right? That's the reason why there's the disagreement, is I think that there some conflation, right? So far, the attempts to stamp out capitalism have been atrocious. The attempts to stamp out capitalism have been atrocious. That's going to need some clarification. Hey, welcome in, Trashnomancer. Good to see you. I'm super behind in chat, just to give everybody, and if there's anybody else that's come in, wow, I am even more behind in chat than I thought. So I'm getting there. Hold on. For there to be state power out of law, private property, there would have to be state government. think we all anarchists here, so it's less private property being banned and more private property is theft, then you have no way to maintain. Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. Wizard's Bread book. So far, capitalism has been atrocious. Thank you. Totalitarian regimes like USSR, DPRK tried to get rid of private property and could not do it more than a generation or two. Yeah, because they didn't do it the right way. They tried to do it in a top-down way. That's one of the things that we here in this kind of space have talked about over and over and over and over again. All of the wrong ways to do it. And that's definitely one of the wrong ways to do it, is to try to impose ideals from a top-down perspective. That's almost always going to not work and be oppressive, actually. That's it. That's the establishment of hierarchies and another kind of state. What you were referring to, human wrongs, is the establishment of permanent hierarchies and another kind of state. What Stalin didn't come anywhere near communism. Stalin installed another state. Sorry, everybody, the dogs are going to bark for a while because the UPS truck is here. So, but this gives me a chance to get caught up in chat. You've got to disassemble the trolley, I reckon. Absolutely, poor whistle. And you can own a factory if you don't have any army of cops to stop the workers from hanging you upside down. Right. That's exactly right. Private property exists by the implied force and violence of a government. You can't own a factory if you don't have the army or cops to stop the workers from hanging you upside down. Right, so because black markets developed, we give up on the whole project. That doesn't seem like it's a very good strategy. That one thing didn't work at one time, so that's it. Power. Huh. Okay. That's that. You just need however much force you need to defend it against those who would be willing to be able to take it. So you believe in might makes right. Human wrongs. You believe in might makes right. So if that's the case, then there's no amount of idea exchange that we can have that we're going to have any kind of consensus on. Because I believe that there are things that are right that you should not do. And the idea that might make right is in mutually exclusive with that. Say that to right. No, I should read. To say that to decolonize everything and get rid of the idea of nations would group rivals together due to their skin color is pretty colonial and racist and creates an environment which is easy to colonize again due to no borders. I'm glad I've read it out loud, but I'm not sure that I have a response to respond back to it for better or worse, or like in I don't think I have pushback, but I also don't know that I agree with that. Because I don't think that. Well, let me okay, to say that to colonize everything, get rid of the idea of nations, but group rivals together. Not necessarily. It could It could if we were not thoughtful or careful or deliberate about how that worked, right? It could group rivals together, but I don't think it would necessarily, and it certainly doesn't have to. Due to their skin color, which is pretty colonial and racist, and creates an environment which is easy to decolonize again. And I disagree with that, because I think that having groups together who are different helps those different groups understand that the other different group is also human too, and more like them than maybe they thought. This is the process of normalization. When people live together, especially in close proximity, and especially when those people work together towards common goals, usually those people come to understand that their differences are arbitrary. So I believe that a world in which we've gotten rid of the idea of borders and nationality. That's not, no, what's the, what is the word that I'm trying to say? Nationalism. Nationalism. I don't know why I was struggling so hard to say nationalism. And that's, I think, one of the difficulties that we might be having is white people, or Americans generally, are going to think about nationalism in one way, and that one way is itself kind of racist. The way that you are referring to nationalism is about solidarity and identity, right? That's I've seen nationalism be used as a vehicle for excuses to do violence and to violate other people's humanity, right? And that's not what you're arguing, but that idea is not divorceable from the thing that you're arguing. So that's part of why there's so much to suss through with what we're working out here. Well, in the case there can be no thing as non-state, non-government power. No, that's not true at all. I don't know what you're responding to. It is not the case that there can be no such thing as non-state or non-government power. Again, look at history. Right. And that's human wrongs. You need to stop talking in chat. Just take a break, because everything that you are saying in chat is wrong and is ahistorical. You're just making up a whole bunch of arguments about a whole bunch of stuff that isn't real. Just stop. Just stop with the ahistorical bullshit. You know, there's so much going on here, and it's hard to tell, because I've got Jane here saying for free, and I can't figure out what Jane is talking about. But because it's just there's so much back and forth going on. It's okay. It's all right. We'll get caught up there. Only if you limit power to force or violence. Right. That said, neither. Right. Oh, thanks, poor boy soul. I try to be interactive with chat. Sometimes it gets me really behind, but that's okay. We're making really good content. And this is really good conversation. Not really, really good, because human wrongs is making a bunch of points about a bunch of mythological ideas that aren't grounded in actual history or facts. So it's not really a really good conversation, but at least we're getting to the truth of human wrongs being, well, wrong about pretty much everything that they've said in chat so far. If not, then non-hierarchical societies would be upheld by forces as well. No. No. Right, and that's the thing. Non-hierarchical societies have existed, and those societies existed without police, or governments, or courts, or decides to do something that goes against the wishes against other members of the society and does not care about people not wanting them to blah blah blah. So this is just a version of the free rider. So if someone, I just want to make this really easy for everyone. The human wrong says if someone ultimately decides to do something that goes against the wishes against other members of the society and does not care about people not wanting them to, ultimately the only thing that can stop them is force. No, that is not the case. It is not the case that it will always be necessarily the case that there's always somebody who wants to do harm, that always somebody who wants to murder, there's always somebody who wants to exploit, and the only way we can stop them from doing that is by doing violence to them. That is a false dilemma. It is not the case that it is always violent, or we just have to tolerate the people. That is a false dilemma. That's not real life. Societies, for all of human history, have figured out how to work out their differences when they couldn't agree on things. And those societies didn't collapse. They didn't fall apart. They didn't starve. Those societies are why we still have societies today. Right? They are the precursor that let us get to this point. Right? That your ideas just don't make sense. Capitalism can't exist without massive death and exploitation keeping it afloat. That is a necessary thing. That is a very real statement about states of affairs in the world. Right? As opposed to, well, the only way we can work out our differences is through violence. What the fuck? Right? No, you can get 12 people together and say no to the one person, and that one person's going to go, well, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, most of this is really things that I've already said. You guys are having the conversation. Like, I'm just way behind you all. Capitalism has been around for thousands of years. Wrong. Capitalism has been around at most for a little over 1,000 years. If we want to be really free and non-specific with the language, capitalism has not been around for thousands of years. That's just not true. I mean, that's the thing. You don't know any of the things that you're talking about, human wrongs. You don't know things. You don't know what you're talking about, because that's a wrong thing. And you're coming in here and using that as though it's a basis for the argument that you're trying to make, but it's not true. And it's never been true. Right? Try and use history as an example. Find examples that have actually happened in history that support your ideas. Yeah, also markets aren't capitalism. Thank you, Jane. Also, markets aren't capitalism. And this is, right, if you're talking to somebody and they can't understand that kind of concept, you might be wasting your time. Because that Jane is completely correct. Markets aren't capitalism. Markets are just the way that we exchange goods and services in an economy, and economies have existed for hundreds of thousands of years before the advent of capitalism. Like capitalism isn't this big boogeyman. Right. Wait, what? Personally, I like the free market because it can allow cultural contact. We can have cultural contact without capitalist markets. And the free market and capitalism are also not synonymous. Let's be clear about that the free market is not capitalism. Those are not the same thing. Capitalism isn't a free market. What we have now isn't a free market. In fact, the United States has never had a free market. Never once has a free market existed in the United States. Like, you know that's true, right?
Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Get it? Yeah. Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Get it? Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Get it? Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Get it? Look at all these slave masters.
I think probably any sufficiently urbanized society will develop capitalism provided the state doesn't stomp it out. And I disagree with that. If people had the choice to not do capitalism, people would not do capitalism. That's just true. I mean, that's the thing. Do you prefer to have all of your needs, food, water, shelter, access to health care, do you really think that having all of your rights and needs behind a paywall is the best way to organize society? For you to not actually have any freedoms. That's what capitalism is that you are not allowed to just eat. You're not allowed to just live rent-free. You're not allowed to just be anywhere. You have to pay. You have to pay to be. You have to pay to eat. You have to pay to drink. You have to pay to get health care. You have to pay to get a business license. You have to pay taxes if you have a job. You have to pay to wipe your ass. You have to pay for literally everything in your society. And you think that people would, on purpose, you think that people would prefer for all of their basic needs, for all of their natural rights to be placed behind a paywall, and that people are going to always prefer that system? That's ludicrous. Because if people had the opportunity to not pay rent, to eat without having to buy their groceries, that's what people would prefer. And for you to argue anything else is just absurd. I mean, just that's what you're trying to argue, is that people will always tend to prefer to not have access to food and water and shelter and their rights. What people prefer is to not have access to the things that they need to live right? That's what people prefer. Because that's what you're arguing, right? What you think that you are doing is you're defending the free market, or you're defending free exchange without government intervention. What you think that you're advocating for is laissez-faire economics, but you're not. What you're arguing for is a system in which all of your rights and needs are always deprived of you on purpose. You must pay. You must participate in capitalism or you'll starve, or the state will beat you. Those are your options. That's just ludicrous. Puppies. Oh, yeah, the dog's barking. Wow, we're still at the dog's barking? That was like 10 minutes ago. Because black markets develop, it doesn't seem possible. The black markets argument is not an argument. Human wrongs, that is not an argument. Because black markets emerge is not an argument for us to give a shit about something. Ever, under any circumstances. That's not ever going to be a meaningful argument that anybody takes with any kind of substance or credibility. Every time that black markets emerge, it's only because we are not considering material conditions appropriately for whatever ends that we're trying to accomplish, for better or worse. That's the reason why black markets exist in a capitalist society, is because people rebel against the capitalist society, right? That's the thing about your black markets argument that you don't seem to understand, is we have black markets now in the capitalist society. So fuck that argument. You know, like, what are you doing? You're out here shooting blanks, right? Everything that you have put in chat as an argument has just been a joke, really. You're terrible at this. You really don't have any idea what you're doing. You don't have any idea what you're talking about. You don't have any concept of actual human history. You are so divorced from facts and from reality. It's just unbelievable. There will always be bourgeoisie. I don't think that that's true. See, and that's, you can't have that, Julius Cheshire. You cannot have that. It is not the case that you can become the bourgeoisie in a way that is not exploitative. Right? That's categorically impossible. That's what bourgeoisie is being a owning class that doesn't have to work because you are leveraging your capital to exploit workers for their labor. That's what the bourgeoisie is. There's no other definition. There's no other way to interpret that. If bourgeoisie exists, it exists to exploit. It exists because it is exploitative necessarily. And we don't want everything equal in communism either. That's another myth that we probably should nip in the bud. I was going to move right on, but everything is equal in it, but nothing was equal in communism because we can't develop the perfect ideology. No, that communism doesn't want equality. Well, Kai Matara is going to come in now and correct me on the direct, because there's many different understandings of equality. What communism is interested in is, when I was talking about rights, your rights to food, your right to shelter, your right to health care, and all of those rights are behind a paywall. What communism is, in theory, is that the paywall shouldn't exist. that you should have a right to food and to shelter and to access to health care. And nobody should interfere with your ability to secure those things for yourself. And nobody is going to interfere with other people who will probably want to help you build your house and probably want to help feed you because they consider you a valuable member of the community. That's what communities do, is they help each other, right? And it's not about, you don't get to be bourgeoisie. You don't get to be bourgeoisie without the exploitation, necessarily. Okay. Good. You're still having the same, they couldn't, they tried to ban it, but they couldn't wholly enforce the ban. You're still going on about the black fucking markets, which still don't mean anything, which still don't make any point or prove any point or add any substance to your arguments whatsoever. Okay, so I'm not sure how far back we are. If it's wrong and ahistorical, then I'd love to hear why. For hundreds of thousands of years, peoples worked together to build civilizations. We have historical records, we have anthropological evidence about hundreds of thousands of years of history of people working together to build some societies that didn't have police, that didn't have capitalism. And I don't understand why that's controversial. That's history. That's the history. Julius Cheshire, I'm not sure that it's the same. So I've met a lot of uneducated indigenous people who are absolutely fucking brilliant. I hands down agree with that. And I don't think that education is necessary for someone being able to comprehend ideas or concepts or to grasp. I don't think that accreditation is a sign of intelligence so far as we can rate or quantify that. But I'm not quite sure that that's the same thing that's going on with human wrongs, right? It seems like human wrongs is using their ignorance that they don't know history as a defense. They're defending themselves with their ignorance. And that's, I don't think it's quite the same. But I think that you are right for bringing up that just because somebody doesn't have accreditation or just because somebody hasn't had X amount of schooling or whatever, that we shouldn't take their ideas seriously. I think that there's something there. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Something just happened. Okay, good. I'm gonna scroll down and find out what just happened. Cool. Thank you. I don't even question if Matt has given them a timeout. Cool. I'm not even gonna question that. Good. That gives me an opportunity to catch up too, because Human Wrongs just would not saying wrong, incorrect, ahistorical things in chat. So well, there was a lot of stuff that was wrong there. Man, that's way back there. Okay. I like that. I'm not going to step on a Marxist to dunk on a chud. Good. That's Human Wrongs came in. We'll get there. Hold on. What non-hierarchy society existed, which has lasted to this day, or had a significant impact in history, which can be felt today. Julius Cheshire. Just because something isn't remembered by history doesn't mean it wasn't valuable, right? I would like to remind you that my people, the Scottish Celts, were almost entirely erased from history. And my people haven't determined the course of history and haven't made any significant impacts on history. That doesn't mean that my cultural heritage isn't valuable, right? And neither is yours, right? Just because you haven't had the opportunity to be a part of governments and those governments haven't had a significant impact on history also doesn't have anything to do with the value of your people at all. At all. And what non-hierarchical society existed that has lasted to this day, also doesn't matter, right? The Paris Commune was doing the right thing. And that it was only able to last for a year and some change isn't the fault of the people who organized it. It's the fault of the capitalists who couldn't stand to let the Paris Commune stand as an example of how things can work and not capitalistic. The capitalists killed the people in the Paris Commune. The erasure, the intentional erasure of indigenous people on Turtle Island is a deliberate attempt to erase lifeways that are viable alternatives to capitalism, that have existed for hundreds of thousands of years. That's what I'm trying. So I mean, I'm not sure what you're trying to argue. At this point, yeah. Currency literacy only exists at all due to debt. It's not a necessary thing for societies, and it's not a necessary thing for commodity exchange. Not a necessary thing for markets at all. Trust more others. No, probably not. Yeah, I think that's a good recommendation, Trash Nomancer. So let me read this. I might suggest you maybe think about what could be instead of what couldn't. And maybe life could be more fun, interesting, engaging, instead of cutting down the ideas of those who have thought about them, maybe learn from those people, right? So, yes, the part of what I would like to draw attention to with Trash Nomancer's comment here is every critique, this is categorically true across the board. Every critique that anybody brings up about alternatives to capitalism, every critique that everyone always brings up anytime anybody is critiquing alternatives to capitalism, that critique exists in our society. Right now, today, with what we have in our capitalist bullshit, every time we are making proposals about how we can make things different, and somebody has some critiques about that, that critique is informed by what we have. Therefore, is not a good reason to not try something new. There is no critiques that you can have against communism, against socialism, or against anarchism that aren't true of the system we have right now today. Period. Period. And Trashnomancer is absolutely 100% fucking right about this approach. We need to think about what can work, what we can do, what has worked. And that's it. If we spend all of our time critiquing, what we're doing is we're missing the fact that we're only critiquing the system that we already have. We're not actually making headway towards a better future. Every time, no matter what, there are no criticisms of alternatives that matter at all. There are no criticisms of alternatives that aren't real, that don't already exist in this system. I challenge you, please, prove me wrong on that. Find something that you can critique about communism that won't be true about the system we already have. Please, I've been waiting for fucking years for someone to come up with one thing. I can describe the logistics of industrial automation, the bureaucratic inefficiencies of our capitalist system would make y'all corn cob into a cockroach like Kafka. I love that. It'd be easier to find a Minecraft server with function, yeah. Means of production has always existed. You can find ancient Sumerian tablets about a guy arguing over copper he bought from another market. That's personal property. That's different than ownership. Julius Cheshire. What in this example, when you're talking about this guy arguing about the silver cup, that's personal property. That's not the same as private property, and it's not the same as means of production. That's not quite the same thing. To what Waxing is saying now, currency is a prerequisite to markets, which are prerequisite to capitalism. Currency can only exist by state enforcement. Without a state, you can't have capitalism, right? State is a necessary condition for capitalism, right? And this is something we've talked about before, Kaimatara. Thank you for bringing this back up. The state is a necessary condition for capitalism. Capitalism doesn't exist before states enforce its existence. This is because the function and relentless drive of individual firms drives them to act in self-defense, defensive ways, where each pursues profit and survival by cutting costs and competing ruthlessly. Yet this behavior collectively undermines the very conditions capitalism needs to be productive itself, or to reproduce itself, such as stable demand or a healthy workforce. No firm has the incentive or capacity to secure these long-term conditions, and this is where the state factors in, right? The capitalism would grind the workers into oblivion were it not for the existence of the state. The state keeps the workers alive enough that there's a workforce enough to perpetuate the capitalist system. Dependent on taxation and accumulation for survival, the state simultaneously provides what capital cannot: property rights, legal frameworks, currency, stability, education, welfare, infrastructure. Well, and this is all ad hoc justification, right? So, well, I'll finish reading and then I'll say that. It acts as what you might call the ideal collective capitalist, ensuring the system as a whole continues even when individual firms threaten its collapse. Right, so what we're talking about is the establishment of ad hoc systems which then justify the coercion, right? That's what the state does, is it interferes with what is going on to maintain some kind of status quo, by doing so making itself indispensable in the balancing of those interests. Right? And then it creates laws which give itself legitimacy, right? It has no legitimacy. It takes power from capital. Capital needs for there to be some central organization that can maintain the workforce, maintain the status quo, and in exchange, those two powers are in competition, but they're in a competition with each other to help and support each other. Their competition with each other is eradicating us, right? That's what their competition is eradicating, but keeping us in line. Right, it conditioning us to be the right kind of worker, conditioning us to be the right kind of citizen, so that we understand we are conditioned to be the kinds of people who will recreate property rights, who will recreate those legal frameworks which justify the capitalists owning all of the stuff. Right, that's how it works. Is the state conditions us to be the kind of people to recreate the state and capital as it is. State manages capitalist contradictions, yes, and guarantees its survival. Without the state, the competitive logic of capital would eventually destroy itself. Without capital, a state would lose its material foundation. Right, wouldn't be able to centralize its power without the precarity that is created by the capitalist machine. Right? That's how the state legitimizes its power, because you live precariously, right? You live precariously because the state allows capitalists to do what they do. But the state uses your precarity as a reason for its own existence. It gets to speak out of both sides of its mouth, and then to have its cake and eat it too. Yeah, no, I wrote this in my "The Right Can't Be Political" article. Just copying and pasting from it. Yeah, absolutely. It was a good article. I really enjoyed going over that one on stream. Fives. Yeah, black markets are free markets, right? And I hadn't thought about that, Matt. But as soon as I read that black markets are free markets, that's actually a more legitimizing argument against what whatever that human wrongs was saying, right? Trying to use black markets as a legitimization for their argument, but actually the only markets which have ever existed as free markets are black markets. I mean, I don't know that that's sweepingly completely accurate, but There's a long-running joke. The anarchists don't believe in capital punishment unless someone does one of the bad crimes, in which case they should be thrown in a volcano. But honestly, if you piss off enough people, get thrown in a volcano, you probably deserve it, right? Shows that we buy what we want, we need from an individual who owns a means of production illegally. What? Buy what we want and need from an individual who owns a means of production illegally. That's in response to something else, and I'm not sure what that was. Yes, those workers can become the bourgeoisie later on. No. There's no way to become bourgeoisie without being an exploitator. That's it. Yes. It was not socialist, let alone communist. It was state capitalist. Thank you. Absolutely. Yep, both existed under global capitalism. Yep. Yep. See, this question, the difference between a capitalist state and a communist or socialist state. Okay, so capitalism is a classless, stateless, moneyless society. There is no state. There is no state in capitalism. There is no state in capitalism. I know it's hard. I know it's hard to imagine because you've always only existed in a world with states. And it's hard to understand how humans can be organized in ways that aren't in a state. But communism is a classless, moneyless, stateless society. So there is no state. So the government doesn't own the means of production.
Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Get it? Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Get it? Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Get it? Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Get it? Look at all these slave masters. Hey.
Right, that's Bread's Wizard's Bread book is explaining right here. Markets show that humans will choose to buy something from someone who owns the means of production illegally because someone they want, not need. That's not what black markets prove. What black markets prove is that people will find a way to exchange goods and services no matter how much we regulate a system.
As long as
hey, fantastic. Welcome. Thank you for the whatever that is. I'm not looking at my dashboard, so I can't see it. Hey, we got a sub. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, I should have looked at my sub goal. Thank you so much, Tricer. That's awesome. I appreciate the sub. Yeah, Yellow Parenti. Yes. Good to have you in. Welcome in. Fantastic. Thank you so much for the sub. You're awesome. I appreciate the heck out of that. I'm really behind on chat right now, so I'm trying to get caught up. But I'm almost there, it looks like. Yeah, I've only got, 2 or 3 bars to scroll through. Yeah, this is, good. I'm just getting caught up to where Human Wrongs was timed out. Okay, would you say that most leftists like to avoid the trolley problem? Yes. I would say that most leftists like to avoid the trolley problem. Yes. Because most leftists want an ideal solution, and the trolley problem doesn't give us an ideal solution. It gives us, so one of the aspects of a dilemma. So we'll talk a little bit about a dilemma. Hold on, let me pin this. It won't let me. Okay, we're going to come back to that, Kayamatara. Thank you for that excellent question. There's a lot to unpack there, and I want to unpack that. But there's not much for me to get caught back up on chat. That's a hype train from just one sub. That's cool. We're on a hype train. If anybody else want to sub, or cheer or whatever, that would be cool. Have any book recommendations? That is off topic, but I can answer that too. Just don't let me forget. Hey, wow, check that out. Tricer again with 5 gifted subs. You are just fantastic. Look at that. Thank you so much for gifting a bunch of subs to my community. That's amazing. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for gifting subs out so that people can use my awesome emotes everywhere else. I really love my own emotes. I like to, and I don't float my boat about much, but my emotes kick ass. But I'm really close to getting caught. There we go. There's Tricer in chat. Welcome in. I think that why SOCDEM countries and their various unions suck. Yes. Yes. And that's when in the conversation of socialism, generally I don't think that socialism is enough. There's a lot of nuance to be had there. What kind of socialism do we mean? And do we mean democratic socialism? Or to what degree it's one or the other? To what degree do we still have some kind of liberalism? To what degree do we still have some kind of capital? Right? Those are all things that make me think that socialism isn't enough. But socialism is still better, and the right direction. Maybe there's maybe we'll have to have some conversation about that in a minute. But IG not far off topic. I don't know. We're the best dictatorship of the proletariat. Oh, there's no state in capitalism. What? Is that what the transcript said, that there's no state in capitalism? Okay, we'll get to that. Those concerns in a minute. Oh, Matt gave me their last biddy. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate your last biddy too. Leave it alone. Let's probably hit 5 ace agents to save one person. Yeah, fuck ice. All day, fuck ice. Yeah, I didn't look to see who got, yeah, I didn't even look to see, DJ Che got a gift sub. Crash Nomancer got one. Good. Is in here while streaming. Yeah, that is actually very DJ Che, is to be a chatter sitting in my chat thing even while they're streaming. DJ Che is amazing. We'll give them a shout out in just a minute. In fact, that was a good time. Because I just got caught up. There was somebody else I wanted to shout out earlier, and I don't remember who it was that came up. But They have and currently are blocking people from entering into their professions, having control over how many places available at uni programs. They prevent foreign transcripts from getting validated, etc. Seems like that's a response to. Oh, okay. Ideal is not perfect. We are imperfect, and our world is imperfect. Absolutely, I completely agree with that. No, you're not derailing, Tracer. You're good. Am I saying your name right, Tracer? Or is it Tricker? Okay, Tricker. Gotcha. Yeah, and you know that's more common with the C in most languages, so I probably should have made that assumption. That's one that I forget about an awful lot. Yeah. Good. That's all going. You guys are having good exchange back and forth. I think that Wizard's Bread book is doing a good job of answering. Stop trying to get me to do stuff. Twitch, stop messing with me. Right. So I wanted to respond to this. I wanted to answer. No, way up here. Aha. Wait. Say the most leftists like to avoid the trolley problem. That's what I wanted to talk about. Oh, good. See you later. If you're heading out, have a great rest of your day. Good to see you, and we'll see you next time. Yeah. So. Here we go. Yes. So that, and I keep going back to this. I want to answer this question because there's some. Well, we'll get there. Okay. Would you say that most leftists like to avoid the trolley problem, at least intentionally? It is more of a tool liberals use. So there is a confusion, and we've talked about this on stream before. There's confusion. People sometimes mistake I got a little bit ahead of myself, but that's okay. We can back up a little bit if we need to. People sometimes mistake utilitarianism or harm reduction for the lesser of two evils. And I think that this is a large part of the reason why. Now, it's not necessarily the case that utilitarianism and harm reduction are synonymous, right? There's a lot of distinction, a lot of difference, a lot to unpack there. I'm a moral philosopher. Trust me, there's a whole tome of difference between these two. But harm reduction is a strategy which is informed by quantifiable evidence, which points towards morally preferable ends, i.e., consequentialism, right? Harm reduction is a strategy directed at quantifiable,
in order for nonviolence
statistically
to work, your opponents must have a conscience. The United States has none.
Absolutely.
In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience. The United States has none. I need to figure out why it's triggering twice.
I think that what it is that I, when you say it, it triggers, and then when the message posts in chat, then that triggers again. I need to figure out how to make it not do that, but that's all right. Right. So, right. What I'm getting to, the
in order for nonviolence to work,
system,
your opponent must have a conscience.
The liberal
United States
system
has
in
none.
place wants us to adopt a permanent strategy of choosing the lesser of two evils, so that what we always get is evil. This is on fucking purpose, right? Obviously, when it's spelled out like this, it seems obvious that that's the case. The status quo is such that it requires you to be locked in a system where you become conditioned to accepting lesser of two evils. And this is the liberal mentality. It is okay for me to look the other way when there is a genocide going on in Palestine, because the alternative is for me to endanger myself. This is what informs the liberal ideology. It's okay if it's someone else's genocide. Thank you, Mitnerd. Shout out to Mitnerd 36, right? It's okay for us to turn a blind eye to someone else's genocide, because the alternative is that I endanger myself, my safety, my comfort, my privilege. And this is why leftists it's funny, when you asked the question, I assumed it was loaded. I assumed it was a loaded question, and maybe I shouldn't have made that assumption now, but I'm already going on with it. So I think that there are a lot of performative leftists who like to engage in the theory. They like to dress up in the uniform. But when it comes down to it, they are absolutely comfortable choosing the lesser of two evils. The trolley problem, one of the beautiful things about the trolley problem is it forces us into an uncomfortable situation. The realization that you should take away from the trolley problem is that the trolley shouldn't be coming down the tracks with people on it. Right. The trolley problem is not about whether or not you pull the lever. At all. The trolley problem is the takeaway. The takeaway is that whether you pull the lever or not, the trolley is coming, and that's the fucking problem. We need to do something about the careening trolley. Pulling the lever now, or not pulling the lever now, in no way solves our problems. Makes nothing better. Changes nothing about the material reality of tomorrow, other than there might be more or less comrades dead now, right? That's the real takeaway there. And it took me a minute to work that out, to get that out, but I wanted to not walk away from that. I wanted to not skip that point, because that's people always think that the trolley problem is about picking the lesser of two evils. The trolley problem is intended to get you to understand that understanding morality in neat binaries is fucking wrong and problematic, and doesn't help us solve the problem that there's a fucking careening trolley, and that shouldn't be the case in a world where there are workers on the track, right? The conditions we find ourselves in need to be changed. Not whether we pull the lever or not. I've got Matt, I've got a cooldown on it. Oh, you know what? I think I just figured out what the problem is. So, Matt, for context, the command for that, for the non-violence trigger, I have non-violence without the hyphen, non-violence with the hyphen, non-violent without the hyphen, and non-violent with whichever one I said didn't say before, with the hyphen. It's triggering twice. I have a cooldown on all of them, but I've got all 4 of them in there, so it just keeps getting tagged twice. The Firebot doesn't recognize it as the same command because I've got 4 different commands in there. There's probably a more efficient way to do that, but I don't know how to do that yet. Good. Okay. And if you want to map the trolley problem onto the current situation of today, the cost of capitalism, etc. In current day capitalism, the trolley hits 745,000 per year. Right, that's the death toll of capitalism. Right, yearly. Right, that's what you put in there. Yeah. Somebody did the pull the lever halfway through again. I didn't see it, but okay. Oh, that's make sure to give the local MB a Gundam to fight the patriarchy if you can. Absolutely, Wizard's Bread Book. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you for stopping by and chatting with us. You've been fantastic. Thank you. Next time someone brings up the trolley problem, bringing up trolleys can stop on their own. Yeah. Trolley drift gif. I agree. It is pretty funny. Good. I got caught up in chat. And I mean, yeah, okay. I'm tired. This has been a fantastic stream. Thank you all so much. But I've been streaming for about 4 hours, and it's more time than I'm used to streaming. It's more time than I intended to stream today. I meant to tell you all about my school situation. I didn't even get to complain about that, but that's okay. I'll do that the next time on Wednesday stream. But it's not so bad. I do want to complain about school, but it's really not so bad, and next week's going to be fantastic. That's really what the point was. I was going to tell you all that I'm really overwhelmed this week, right? Because I missed Wednesday's stream to fix my van. I did the repair, but I can't get the thermostat to open up, so it won't take all of the fluid, which means I'm going to have to drive it somewhere to get the engine hot enough so
In
that I
order
can
for
do that.
nonviolence to work,
But,
your opponent must have a conscience. The United States has none.
But this afternoon would have been the time that I needed to do that,
your
and I
opponent must
streamed
have
instead.
a conscience.
So,
The United States has none.
so basically, I chose to stream today knowing that because I'm streaming today, I'm going to have to do a bunch of schoolwork all weekend. So you're welcome. But also I chose to be here because I love you all and I love doing this, and I appreciate you being here and being patient with me for all the times that I have to miss streams. So so anyways, I'm just trying to say thank you and I appreciate you all. But I think I'm about ready to end the stream. In everyday life, as colonial subjects face death, non-violence or violence becomes a redundant balance because those who argue those points on if violent resistance or non-violent resistance will prevent more death overlook the preventable death is a common word in the vocabulary of the everyday life of the colonial subject. Right, is a commonplace, is a commonly accepted thing. Too common, right? This is kind of a banality of evil thing, right? Where we understand, no, we come to believe that certain systems within our society are necessary, even when those systems are literally murdering people every day or every year in a capitalist hellscape. We come to understand these things as necessary, therefore something that we can't do away with. They're beyond good and evil, as Nietzsche would say, right? And we need to understand that there is nothing which is beyond good and evil. We have the right to critique all systems. We have the right to dismantle all systems. Nothing has the right to exist. People do. People have the right to exist, period. Nothing else does. No states, no laws, no courts, nothing else matters. People have rights to exist. Not states, not governments, not anything else. Right. From the high suicide rates of Maori to MMIW, MMIP, none of these arguments actually prevent more deaths at all, because it doesn't stop the death. It just makes it more or less bureaucratized. Yes. Right. It gives, it lends legitimacy to those systems. And I think that missing and murdered Indigenous women I think that issue really perfectly encapsulates the disgusting grossness of this attitude. But it really has to do with the thing that we were talking about at the beginning of stream, just a general lack of apathy, right? And an understanding that your problems are my problems and that I should care about the genocide in Palestine as though it were happening in my backyard, right? Because when, from the human perspective, it doesn't matter, right? Until we all have human rights. None of us do. Until we all have justice. None of us do. And that's necessarily categorically always true. And a good line to leave off on. Right. Eat, drink, and sleep, and then of course stream more. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tricker. Thank you for all of the subs. Thank you for the financial support. That's really gonna help me a lot. So I appreciate the absolute heck out of it. So so that's awesome, and I appreciate, as always, everybody here who is contributing to the chat. That's also incredibly valuable. The reason why I do this is so that I can learn. And that's one of my favorite things about showing up to stream, is that you are all a bunch of brilliant, astute, critical thinkers who challenge my ideas, who challenge my assumptions, challenge the way that I understand the world in a way that helps me be better, right? And so I appreciate you so much for helping me be a better me, because I couldn't do it without you all. So because the video is way too busy. Is it me because I'm moving around so much? Absolutely. Well, I enjoyed having you here. I hope you come back, because you've got a lot of brilliant stuff to say too. I'm not just thanking you for the money. Thank you for all the brilliant stuff that you've said in chat today, Tricker.
In order for nonviolence
Street
to
Cat
work,
Love, excellent. Good to see you too. Just in time for the raid.
The United States has none.
Good to. In fact, let me shout out Street Cat Love before we. Quick, everyone, if you're not already following Street Cat Love, do that, because they are awesome and wholesome, and they're a comrade. We're just gonna keep the Turi thing going. That's all right, man. Fucking let's go. That's everybody that's got a sub. Make sure you bring your Turis into DJ Che's chat. Let's we're raiding into DJ Che. Yes. Good. Or are we already raiding?